Start sending us. We are connected. We're off and away. How you guys doing today? I actually had a really, really great day today. I was finally able, because for all last week I was dealing with the second dose, and so it literally put me out. I slept through most of the week, so my apartment just looked like a disaster. And then of course I work over the weekend, and so wasn't able to get to it. And finally today, cleaned up the apartment, gave it a nice sweep, did all my dishes, right? My laundry's where it should be. It's amazing how quickly, everything can just descend into chaos, right? If you're just out and you're down and you're by yourself, right? It takes it's like a big crank to get things back and going. And so today, and I went and got some groceries, my fridge was completely empty. So boy, I feel good about myself today, man. I feel good about myself today. So, let's, we're streaming away, we're streaming away. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy, I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me, watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. We're streaming today, let's stream today. Hey Crouching, how you doing, bud? Work is good, it's good. First of all, one of the most important things that I think about it is that it's a good way to break up my week, honestly. It's a good thing it's just, going and working at a cafe, going and working in the capitalist system as it stands, just to break it up and to remind me how much capitalism actually sucks. But the job itself is not too bad, it's just cafe work. The tips are good, the clientele is good, the boss is good. I get lots of perks and fringe benefits. It's very clear that the fellow that runs the place is not a billionaire capitalist. His story. This is the thing that is frustrating about the capitalist system, is that there's people operating within it, business owners operating within it, who I genuinely do think would be happy if the system that they worked in was more like a co-op or had more worker kind of connection. It's just that the capitalist model is the model, right? That's the primary model. That's how everyone gets told how to structure this. And I think about someone like the guy I'm working for now, and he is literally a 4-star chef. Hey DM, how you doing? Good to see you, bud. He's a 4-star chef. I think that he literally just wants to have this restaurant so that he can be a 4-star chef. I think if it wasn't for... If the model looked different, he would still operate within that model, and I think he's quite happy with that kind of a thing. And I think it shows. I think he just wants to be a chef. That's it. And that's the long and short of his where he's gone, right? So if suddenly the society turned communist and the structures changed and all that kind of stuff, I think he'd be perfectly happy with that. Where capitalism goes wrong is when, let's say he erected a business like this, and now, let's say he's looking to retire. This is exactly the system that happened when I worked at the toy store, right? That I worked for a gentleman who just wanted to own and operate a toy store, right? Literally, that's it. And then he got to be retirement age, and he sold his business to just corporate shills who literally look at spreadsheets. They don't care. That this business could have sold toothpicks as far as they are concerned. They didn't care. And I never met them. Nobody knew who they were. And, you start making decisions from that position, and that's where capitalism really shows that it's a psychotic system that doesn't actually work, right? Is when it's the business owner is in the business and working alongside you, and you know who they are, and you can talk to them and all of that kind of stuff. That's one form of capitalism that usually the capitalist apologists, that's where they work from. Whereas people like myself, when we talk about capitalism, we're talking about the majority stakeholders who couldn't find the businesses they own on a map, who don't care to know anything about them, certainly don't care to know anything about the people, and treat the workers like they would treat a chair, right? Like it's just, oh, well, we don't need those chairs, just get rid of them, right? And so far so good, but my view has become like I will never work for a corporate entity ever again. Those are inherently evil, like they're inherently demonic. And if I am working for a business that is owned by just like a fellow who I can meet and all that kind of stuff, and he turns around and sells it to a corporate entity, that's the day I quit. I just quit. Because I'm not interested in working for demons. John, I know you probably remember the Kids in the Hall. Yeah, the 90s Canadian sketch comedy show. They did a skit, Each Day We Work. It shows the existential nightmare slaving in the capitalist system. Well, and I would show it to you, but I wager that stuff is all on copyright, so I don't want my stream to get blocked. Yeah, I'll take a look at it, though, bud. So I think the first thing that we got to do, guys, is pick a number, right? Everybody's got to pick a number. Aga, DM, Drew, how you doing, bud? Good to see you, Crouching. What do we do? I'm feeling an 8. I'm feeling an 8.
Here we go for today's number.
It's
September 13, 2021. 10 balls.
10 balls. Here we go, guys.
Each ball has a number.
Who's going to be the lucky winner? We got a 3, we got a 5.
Numbers 1
Aga
through
just going
10.
right down the middle.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. Drew with a 1. Just watch, it's going to be a 10
Pick
now.
a number.
Every time someone's picked a 1 or a 10, it's been the inverse.
Today's number is...
Oh!
1.
There you go, Drew. Oh, you gotta go buy a lottery ticket or something. Is there something that you wanted to risk at? Is there something that you wanted to do? Today's your day, Drew. Off you go. Sail to the moon. Verb the noun, etc. and onward. I believe in you. And so does David Lynch in the universe around you. Let's go. Let's go. Well, let's say farewell to the beautiful Ontario. I think this looks like Sleeping Giant. This looks like Sleeping Giant. Yeah, Drew, that is exactly right. All winnings go to me. So, you pay up. That's such a great joke. Okay, let's take a look at our federal simulator. Looks like, honestly, it looks like the conservatives are dipping. Ever so slightly, right? That they used to be up at like 147. Like this whole dynamic was flipped. Remember how I told you guys that Canadian politics, like Canadians are very, very fickle, and that polls really, really do shift? I actually think that this election has not been that volatile. It could have been much, much more volatile than this. And previous Canadian elections have been more volatile than this. Oh, my goodness. Excellent, Matthias. So glad to hear it. Hey, Ruth, how you doing? Good to see you. Looks like the Conservatives, honestly, it looks like the Conservatives right after the debate, they're experiencing a dip. And that dip is coinciding with the surge in support. Take a look at this, right? That's the PPC, 6.1, right? They're polling at about the same as the Bloc right now, right? And the Bloc, when it polls at 6.7, it gets 30 seats. Well, when the PPC polls at 6.1, they get 0. So I think it's pretty likely at this stage, because if the reason why this is as it is because this support is centralized, right? Like the way that the ridings work is you don't need all that much support if all of your support is in a single riding, right? And the NDP going down, right? Again, you guys got to remember, this is all aggregate. That, in my view, the NDP have held steady this entire time, right? That if you look at it across the board, right? Sure, you had like a poll up here, a couple of days of polls where it was like, oh, we're sky high, right? But, you know, now it's kind of just down here a little bit. But for the most part, it's been just a slice across that their support hasn't really gone up or down. right? Because if you're at like 18% and suddenly you got a poll that puts you at like 20%, well, that's within the margin of error, right? And so I always take a look at the aggregate, and I have always thought of the NDP that, yep, the support they have is the support they have, and they're not gaining any more. That this moment here where like, oh, look, so the NDP, they're going to surge and all this, but it kind of coincided with the same thing that happened with the Conservatives, where the Conservatives had a surge, and as you can see, that has declined. This right here is what's sad for the Conservatives. That if you're like a dyed-in-the-wool Conservative, you were thinking here, you were like, yeah, we're going to fly to the moon. We're going to take off from here. But very steadily, the Conservatives have just kind of gone boop, 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 back down. It's possible that they start polling again, like up in this territory, but it does seem to make a certain kind of a sense that Conservatives going down, PPC going up, right? That the PPC is largely conservative voters splitting off, and especially after the debate, listening to Aaron O'Toole. I think the largest complaint that is coming out of the PPC in regards to the Conservatives is that Aaron O'Toole is very soft, right? He seems very soft-spoken. He seems very, and in my view, Aaron O'Toole looks good if you're a liberal. But if you're a conservative, Aaron O'Toole doesn't look that great at all. I know. You're absolutely on the money for this, Ruth, that the news is really showing its liberal love, for sure. And DM, I don't think it has anything to do with Justin Trudeau. I think that the general consensus has been that Justin Trudeau kind of looked not that great in that debate. And I think the general consensus, and it's showing in the polls, right, that like right now he is still poised to lose seats, right? That they're at what, one, here, I got it right here. Oh, I had it. Look at me pretending like I'm prepared. Here we go. So they start at 155. And if they walk out with this, well, it's a decline in seats. And it looks like the decline in seats is still, the Conservatives are still gaining seats. They're still gaining seats at this stage in the game, as are the NDP. So this is a pretty clear bleed away into Conservatives and NDP, while there's this massive surge going on for the PPC. And I actually have a really, really great article here that I want to go through with you guys. Who are the People's Party of Canada voters? Right? An extremely good question. And yeah, I mean, the CBC, CTV Global, all bought and paid for by the Liberal government. Well, and if not the Liberal government, certainly the corporate, like the Liberals work for the corporate environment, just like the Conservatives do. The Liberals and the Conservatives are allies, right? So there's a desire to kind of connect. One of the things I definitely do think is happening in the news media, though, is that there's this genuine hope that the society does not plunge itself into fascism. And I think that their strategy at this stage of the game is just don't talk about it. Just don't talk about it. But I think the rise of the PPC is going to make that not the case. Oh, I wanted to let you know that September 18th anti-poverty rally was announced and advertised by Socialist Action on the cross-country meeting. That's wonderful, Aga. Thank you so much. It's so annoying that I can never make it. I can never make it to the Socialist Action stuff because their stuff coincides with my stuff. And I have to, I got to make a choice. And so I'm so happy that is still getting shouts out. And it does look like there's a basic income rally going on at the same time. It was just literally like two different groups put it on the same day, and of course we're not communicating with one another. There's no central communication, right? Which is a hurdle for us to overcome. I think we do need some kind of centralized connecting body that's operating for the benefit of all, and hopefully an outlet like this can start to become something like that. But they're having their march on the same day, September 18th, 1 p.m. at Nathan Phillips Square, and they're going to be marching right by us at 2 p.m. when we start our thing up. And we are going to hopefully peel some people off the one complaint that I've been getting from the basic income people is they don't want to shut down infrastructure. To which my response is, well, then you're not actually that interested in being effective. So we'll see how that all goes. Hopefully there's some bleed over. And if you attend the basic income march, hopefully you'll stop by and join the anti-poverty rally. Hi, but how much of the... Hey, Bubble Guppy, how you doing, bud? How much of the love is framed as fear of conservatives? Yeah. Seems NDP is about what you vote for. Yeah. Well, and again, though, and the NDP are going to have to face this. This is the truth, and I've been saying it the whole time about the NDP. Canadians are not going to vote for a Sikh. They're just not going to do it, right? Like, they can like him all they want. They can say, yeah, he seems like a good guy. They can do all that kind of stuff. But they're not voting for him, right? They're just not voting for him. And I think that Jagmeet Singh, if he wants to actually be the leader of the NDP, he's got to take this head on. Like, he can't just keep pretending as though, oh, well, if I keep saying the right things or even supporting the policies that they want, they're going to come around. He's got to face it on. He's got to take the challenge that Canada is putting in his lap head on, which is straight out, Canadians are not voting for Jagmeet Singh because he's a Sikh. It's black and white. It's very obvious. If he doesn't take that head on, if he doesn't address this with Canadians, they're never going to change their mind. They're never going to change their mind. It's going to be an extremely difficult conversation. He's going to take a lot of heat. It's going to be very difficult, not only for him, not only for the Sikh community, but for Canadians as well. It's going to be a very difficult conversation, and it is most likely that Canadians will reject him. I don't think he needs to resign if he can't get over 20% in this particular election. I think he's going to gain seats. He's going to gain traction. And also, the government is staying in a minority government configuration, which Jagmeet Singh has shown he is extremely competent and capable of working within. But I just do think, there comes a point where he needs the party to keep growing. And the hurdle, right? The hurdle to overcome is that Canadians are not going to vote for a Sikh. And if he can't overcome that hurdle, as heartbreaking as it is and as unfortunate as it is for all of us on the left and for all of us who would like to see him succeed, the unfortunate truth is that if he can't succeed as Sikh, then he does need to step aside. And hopefully he steps aside and continues to support whoever the next leader is. Because that coalition that he has, that base that he has of support, can still be used to effectively change and govern, right? But what a crappy situation. What a crappy situation. And I want him to swing hard. I know the people who are not voting for him because he is Sikh. I know them, right? I am from Manitoba. I know who they are. I know why they are not doing it that way, why they are not voting for a Sikh, right? And it is really some idiocracy bullshit. It's straight up just he looks weird. It really is there. It's just on that level. And Jagmeet Singh is going to have to talk to them directly. He's going to have to do it on the national stage. He's going to have to spend money on advertisements to do it. And he's going to really have to make a genuine and honest case about why it's acceptable to vote for a brown man with a big beard and a turban, right? He is going to have to do that. And if he doesn't, he might as well resign now. Because if he's not going to fight on those lines, then he's not going to fight on any other lines. And he does need to do it. Yeah, he doesn't talk enough about UBI. I'm completely on board with that, Matthias. You're right. It's in the platform. The NDP themselves seem pretty proud of it. I do think that he kind of references it. He doesn't want to get rid of the CERB. He doesn't want to cut any social programming, right? So, the CERB is something of a basic income as it is already. And so, he's kind of circuitously like winking at us, letting us know that like, yeah, I'm on board with this, but he's not standing up and like ringing a bell. You know what I mean? I just wish he was standing around ringing a bell about it, you know? Instead of kind of this like, yeah, nudgy, nudgy, winky, winky. Well, yeah, and it's very popular right now. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so popular that the wealthy are doing everything they can to discredit it, right? Like, that's how popular it is. He's obsessed with sick leave and the rich paying their fair share. Well, the sick leave thing, there's two things going on with that. The sick leave thing is 100% talking to Ontarians, right? That the sick leave conversation that happened here between Andrea Horwath and Doug Ford completely plays, and linking those two things together, I think, is important. I think you're right though. Like it's far too elevated. Like I would much prefer him ringing the bell about a basic income, and the rich paying their fair share. Yeah, but that's 92% of us want to see higher taxes on the wealthy. This is the talking point that has me more than any other talking point. Be like, yeah, people are not voting for him because he's a Sikh. Like, that's really what it is. That, like, if a guy named Jason Singer, just a white dude that looked like Maxime Bernier, was walking around saying, hey, let's raise taxes on the wealthy, that kid would be, like, he'd be getting 100 seats. He'd be getting 120 seats right now. Like, literally just, like, some college graduate who has control of, he, like, walks into the NDP and somehow he gets in charge of the NDP because he's got, like, a big coalition of, like, frat boys, right? And they're all like fratting out together, being like, yeah, woo, yeah, oh yeah, let's do the basic income, bro. Let's tax the rich, bro. Let's go, bro. Come on, let's go. We gotta do it. We gotta do it for our kids. Let's go, right? And he would stand up on that change and be like, hey, bro, we know what we gotta do. We gotta tax these rich people. We gotta give the money to the poor through a basic income, right? NDP. That kid would get 150. He'd get 170. He'd get 100 million seats. Everybody would love that kid. Everyone would love that kid. But that's not what's going on, right? That's not what's going on, and it's really, it's really obvious to me. Like, it's really straightforward. There's just no other reason. Like, can anybody give me another reason why Jagmeet Singh is not just soaring in the polls right now? He sounds good. He's saying the right things. He's exactly in line with what the polling data is showing. He's talking a good game. Oh, big shocker. The same people who are willing to vote for a dude who came out on stage wearing blackface are not turning around and excitedly voting for a Sikh. Yeah. Big shocker right there. Yeah, it's literally a matter of life and death for millions. Yeah. I mean, take a look at what's going on in the United States, for God's sakes. Like, 600,000 people are homeless right now. It's a total fucking disaster. Like, the idea that the conservatives and the liberals are going to remove people's supports. And what has happened in the United States? Well, they did. Some of the states have removed the supports, right? And what happened? Their economy fucking collapsed. Why? Because their entire economy is based on the idea that people spend money, right? This is how an economy fucking works. If nobody spends money, then nobody can hire anybody, right? And so if employment is the only reason anyone can spend any money, and then you take it away, well, then nobody's spending any fucking money, are they? So and then you're suddenly turning around being like, oh, I'm not getting any income because no one has any money, so I can't hire any people anyway, right? And so right now they're stuck in a situation where they're saying like, oh, nobody's coming to work for me for my shitty $7.25 a fucking hour, where I get to abuse them and spit on them and shit on them and act entitled like a fucking boomer. Like I'm allowed to abuse people and so that they can get fucking $7.25 an hour, pat myself on the back and call myself a good fucking citizen. And then but the only reason people can come in the door to buy your shitty service in the first place is because they have the employment insurance, because they have the support in the first place. And so the solution to this like fucking Rubik's Cube of what the fuck is going on in front of your face is raise your wages. But they won't do that. They won't raise their wages because they're selfish assholes who don't give a fuck at all, right? And what's so funny about this conversation, I was actually listening to Hassanabi talk about this, man. I really like Hassan. He's a good guy. And he really pointed out to me that like These capitalists are acting like so terrified and are going on national TV and complaining about it and crying about what's going on. What's the outcome for them? Right? Well, the outcome for them is that they would have to sell everything, so get a nest egg in the first place, but then they would have to become a worker, right? They're not going to die, right? What they're panicking about is that, oh no, this system of worker exploitation that allows me to do no work and be a capitalist is failing me. And I'm panicking because I'm going to have to sell everything and then become a worker myself. Right? And so they're going and they're crawling to the government and they're begging for government support, for government handouts, so that they will not need to be a worker again. Get fucked. All of them. Get fucked. Without exception. Raise your wages. Raise how much you're paying people. Treat people with respect and dignity. You do not have... These guys do not have the right to have a business. Your business has no rights. There is nowhere written anywhere in the history of any constitution or any legal system or any law anywhere since the beginning of Western civilization has anybody thought you have a right to have a business. In fact, the argument has always been the opposite. That if you run a shitty business and you have a shitty business model, that business fails. And the guy beside you, who's running the same kind of business, but he's doing a better job, succeeds. Well, guess what? You can't get workers without paying better wages. Pay better fucking wages. It's very straightforward, you selfish little baby. But the same people who are running these businesses, who own these businesses, are the same type of people who are like, I don't need to put on a mask. A vaccine? That sounds like government talk. I bet they put some nanobots in that vaccine there. I tell you what, I'm not going to take that vaccine, but I hear that you can get some horse medicine, and you drink the horse medicine, and it makes everything a lot better for you. So I'm going to do that. And I can't get a guy to come and work my grill, and I don't understand that at all. $7.25, my great-grandpappy worked for $7.25, and he was able to make it just fine. Like, that's the guy. No. Like, your business fails, you're a failure of a person, get the fuck out of here. If you literally cannot figure out, maybe I should pay people enough so that they can pay rent in the area where my business is. If you can't fucking figure that out, I have zero sympathy. Your business should collapse. You should fail as a worker. You should have your back broken out in the workforce like the fucking rest of us. I hope you end up homeless and die on the streets alone and penniless. Go fuck yourself. Put two and two together, you fucking losers. Put two and two together. Ugh. And if you think that's harsh, too bad. I'm out of sympathy for these guys. Their wounds are completely self-inflicted. Their wounds are complete. You know that meme where there's like a kid and there's a boot on his face and he's like crying and he's going, and then they zoom out a little bit and it's literally the kid has his own hand in the boot and he's doing it to himself. That's these guys. That their big hardship is, instead of making $100,000 a year doing nothing, sitting on my ass and raking in the surplus value of the workers I exploit, I'll only make $80,000. Get fucked. Get fucked. Get fucked. Your entire business model should end. We should end it completely. You are worthless. The workers should seize control. Get fucked. Get fucked. Yeah, basic income needs to be in place sooner than later. It's an inevitability in my view, right? It just depends on how much suffering we're willing to take, right? Do we need to wait until like 20% of the populace is homeless on the streets, right? There's already 600,000 homeless people in America. Right? There's already 600,000 homeless people in America. We can see it. There they are. Do we need to get there too? Like, what level of suffering are we willing to take? And let's not fuck around with this. Right? The Great Depression lasted 10 years. The Great Depression lasted 10 years. There were people whose lives became roving around through America, hopping onto trains, going into boarding houses in order to work seasonal work as they acted like fucking nomads going all over the place in America. That lasted for 10 years, and let's not fucking pretend it won't again, right? So what level of suffering are we willing to accept? What level of suffering are we willing to tolerate? I am already well past it because I think that this capitalist system is trash, that we can literally take it and put it in the trash bin and just be like, no, well, that was a stupid idea. That was a moronic thing to do. All it did was murder everyone. We can do better. We can do a whole lot better, and we should already be there. Is the word economy in media code for capitalist enterprise like it is in the US? Yeah, because rallying for the people and rallying for the economy aren't the same thing, though it should be. Yeah, and people are so, like, because people in North America are so dim-witted, because they're so low level in regards to their ability to imagine, right, that they literally cannot imagine a system other than the system of wage slavery that exists. And if you successfully imagine a different system, or if you successfully articulate one, they're so dim-witted that they will immediately think that that's a threat to them. They'll immediately be like, no, but what we're doing now is exactly the right thing. I'm going to drink my ivermectin and go to sleep. Like, we have to accept that stupidity is in play, right? We have to accept that these people are just stupid. And I'm not trying to say this to them in order to dismiss them, because I actually believe that the great sin that North American culture inflicted on itself was saying that it was acceptable to lie. Saying that it was completely acceptable to walk around and say whatever lie you wanted. People like Rupert Murdoch went to the Supreme Court and argued successfully that I should be completely allowed to lie in major, big-scale ways. Blast lies across the media landscape. Spend hundreds of billions of dollars to lie, and now we're seeing why that's a fucking crime. That those people should go to fucking jail, and they should stay in jail until they die. Because there are stupid people in your society, and there never won't be. And if you take those people and you make them mistrustful, you make them selfish, you make them angry, well, guess what? They're going to do stupid things. And when you stand up and say, no, really, this is the truth, they're going to go, well, you lied to me before about that, and you lied to me before about that. I don't see why I should believe you anymore. You go I'm going to listen to the internet people. And they're right. And they're right. That's the great shame, is that they're right. That even the stupidest person in America has put together that we can't trust the media. Right? That even the stupidest person alive in America today understands that we can't trust the media. That's why lying should be a crime. That's why if these media people start to lie to us, we get to take them and put them in jail. Because if you convince a bunch of stupid people to mistrust the society and mistrust everything around them, then they're going to do extremely stupid things. And it's predictable. It's completely fucking predictable. We can absolutely see it happening. So people like Rupert Murdoch should go to jail. They should fucking go to jail. People like Ben Shapiro should go to fucking jail. They're just liars. Like, they're outright black and white lying. Right? Like, this isn't an issue of like, oh, well, I have a different take on it. Oh, I'm interpreting the information. They're outright lying. They're outright lying. And like, it just destroys the society. It destroys the society. Because right as you need to come together, work together as a unit, create collective decision making, well, we can't. We can't. Even when it's like literally life or death. And who is paying the price for that? Well, the idiots are paying the price for that. And then we all turn around and make fun of them, even though the circumstances and the situation that they are in is 100% the fault of the society. because they have been lied to so thoroughly and they're so distrustful that when we finally say to them, all you got to do is put a mask on, they refuse to believe us, and it's completely our fault. It's completely our fault. Why should they believe us? Give me one reason why these guys should believe us. One fucking reason. And so as they die off in enormous mass droves, because we created a society of mistrust and disinformation, where they refuse to even think a mask covering my face is helpful, well, their blood is on our hands. How many of them have died now? Almost 1 million, right? Almost 1 million. So it's fucking heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking across the board. And I don't have much respect for the people who are making fun of these guys down in the South as they're eating it, right? As they're dying off, right? Those guys are victims. They're completely victims of this North American system. They're completely victims. They're victims of a form of brainwashing. And that's Fox News, right? That's Rupert Murdoch. That's all these guys, right? They're victims of billionaires blasting lies into the atmosphere. And then finally, they're victims of a society who refuses to criminalize that sort of behavior. I have a lot of sympathy for these guys. I do. While simultaneously looking and saying like, well, we're going to have less dumb people around. Man, I'm in a snarky mood, eh? I'm in a snarky mood. Yeah. Oh, yeah. CRB about to end. Millions still on it right now. Exactly. Yeah. Such a flawed system. I had a manager at an old job tell me that they own me while I'm there. Well, at least they're being honest. At least they're being honest. Like, there's something respectable about that, where they're standing up. They're not trying to say, like, we're a family. Yeah, we're a family. We work together as a family. Isn't it nice? We all come together and we're all equal. At least the guy's being like, no, you're here. I pay you. I own you. Like, at least it's fucking honest. Yeah, imagine that. If people don't have cash, the economy fails. What? I thought, why aren't these wealthy guys just creating jobs, guys? Like, what's going on? I thought that they were the job creators, right? You'd think they should just create size. Yeah, it's a fake society. It's because it's not a society. It's not a society. It's just a business, right? And what does business do when they are faced with a problem that they need to solve, right? Well, they just externalize it, right? Oh, there's a bunch of hungry people on the streets. They need food, right? Well, that's not my problem. I don't make money doing that. So I'll just externalize that. And that's what capitalism has always done, right? Because we don't live in a society. Feed the hungry is not part of our objectives. We're not actually interested in that as a people, right? Make wealthy people wealthier. That's what we're doing, right? Because we're not a society. We're a business. Exclusively, without exception. We don't make decisions to help people. We don't look at a situation and say, let's think about their humanity and then resolve the problem that they're faced with honesty and truth and any of that kind of stuff. We're not interested in any of that. We have to make money for shareholders exclusively. Does feeding these guys and housing the homeless, does that make money for these guys? Does that help these guys? No, then we're not going to do it. And even if you find a way to say, but it does, actually, it saves them a bunch of money, they're still going to be like, yeah, but it does mean that they aren't going to be enslaved, right? Like, they're not going to be part of the system of wage slavery any longer. That they'll actually have leverage to say no to shitty exploitive work. So we actually see it as an investment. We see keeping these people homeless as an investment. That's because it's a business. Because it's a business, not a society. Hey, Misty, how you doing? Oh yeah, you guys are really chatting away. That's always how Monday is. I love Mondays. I love coming in on Mondays because you guys are always like bursting at the seams. Happy to see you feeling better, yeah. Does that mean if you're feeling better? Oh, I will, Crouching. I will. Around 7 o'clock. Let me know. Remind me, okay, bud? Mother's family were Okies, which is what you're describing. Hey, Carrie, how you doing? In a security guard company, I had a manager who would not come to the office because of COVID, but sent me to all over the map without mask. When I asked for one, I was told it is not required by law. What a dumb fucking idiot, eh? Like, if my employee was just like, I need a mask, like, just get a mask. They're not expensive. They're not expensive. Like, fuck you. Provide a mask. Such fucking bullshit. Like, such goddamn bullshit. Hey, Inquiring, how you doing, bud? Wow, everybody's showing up. Darren, how you doing, bud? Got to meet Liz Rowley the other day. Had some comrades from the local Communist Party. Oh, guys, start letting me know if people want to be interviewed. Like, if communists want to be interviewed on here, like I interviewed Katie, I'm going to do that, right? I'm gonna see if I can get that set up. I think the problem is propaganda. I don't think people are that stupid. They're ignorant and easily propagandized. I am going to encourage you, Inquiring Mind, to for yourself and for your interactions in the world, right? And I'm not saying this to put people in a position where they judge people or condemn people or think like not that way. But just like lower your expectations a touch. It does make things easier. It makes it easier to interact in the world with lowered expectations, right? Because when someone does something stupid, you can get out of that mindset of being like, ugh, and get more into the mindset of like, oh, okay. And just accept that the situation you're in is, oh, okay, I'm with a stupid. That's fine. But like now I know, so here we go. And I think that a lot of our, like, especially, like, I see it in, like, that liberal socialist divide, right in that line there, when you're tipping one way or the other, is there's a lot of that kind of like, ugh, like that kind of, but it's just because we haven't accepted that reality is a little bit more grounded than I think we like to think. Yes. That there are people walking around who are essentially just talking dogs, right? We're a family here, John. Yeah, we're a family. Lowered expectations. Yeah, we're a family. Vin Diesel, yeah. You know, we do it because we're a family. All right. So, okay, who are the People's Party? Who are the People's Party of Canada voters? Vaccines and vaccine mandates. Not a big surprise here. Polling revealed that 62% of PPC voters had not been partially or fully vaccinated, which contrasts sharply with the rest of the country. So there is a anti-vax vibe amongst the PPC people. Big fucking shocker. Self-perceived economic situation. PPC voters were much more likely to report a negative personal economic situation than the rest of the country. When asked, 37% of PPC voters reported their economic situation was bad or very bad. This contrasted sharply with the national average, where only 21% of Canadians reported their economic system was bad or very bad. So, buried headline here. 21% of Canadians say that their economic system is bad or very bad. Like red alert. 20%. 20%, 1 in 5, every fifth person you talk to is in a bad or very bad economic situation, right? And we got, and what are our federal leaders saying about it? Like, what are they actually saying about it? For real. Like, liberal, conservative, right? At least the NDP are attempting to address it, even though homelessness is complete. Like, the word homeless has not come out of these guys' mouth. If you can find me a clip of any of these guys saying the word homeless, I would love to see it. Because the entire conversation about affordable housing has been surrounding the idea of middle-class people. Another myth that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as middle class in this society, right? Everybody's fucking just working away in a wage slave system for these fucking capitalists who do nothing, are worthless, and can be deleted, and everyone would be better off for it. So, not a big surprise to see that the people who are voting PPC are doing it out of desperation, right? 37% of PPC voters, so almost double than the national average. Has there ever been a party that has galvanized the desperate economic straits of a populace in order to gain support for themselves? Maybe we should take a look at the history books and figure this one out. It's a classic fascist strategy. It is a classic. It's not even it's a fascist strategy, but it's also like what these evangelical Christians do. Prey on the weak and the vulnerable, right? And you can promise them whatever you like, right? And but if you address their situation, right? If you literally look at them and say, like, your economy is failing you. It is failing you, and we're going to do something about it. Well, people are going to be like, yeah, finally a politician that's telling the truth about what's happening in the society. Now, of course, their solutions are going to be like, let's get rid of all these Chinese, right? But, like, you know, they are telling the truth about the economic situation that they're in. And that's the thing that's fascinating about the PPC. Is they're very passionate. Their arguments are persuasive. Their arguments are persuasive. And there are people, there are true believers in their ranks, right? That they are not, like, I guess this is the key difference. This is what's interesting, right? These guys are not grifters. They are not con men. They believe what they say. They believe what they're saying, right? They are not con men. They are not grifters. And that kind of genuine passion that comes from a place of true belief is very persuasive. These guys are very persuasive. And it's more terrifying that they actually believe what they say. Anger with the federal government. Big surprise here. PPC voters were significantly more likely to be angry with the federal government's policy decisions than any other voting group. 70% of PPC voters reported being very angry with the policies of the federal government. In contrast, 46% of Conservative, 15 Bloc, 14 NDP, 10 Green, and 1% of Liberal voters reported being very angry with federal politics. That is an enormous, even when you go PPC to Conservative, right? It's a big step down. And then the next step down is literally a tie between the Bloc and the NDP at 15%. I'm blown away. Tomfoolery, good to see you, bud. But I don't think that it is definitely a series of false assumptions. That they are basing a lot of what they say on a set of false assumptions. That really is white supremacy. It's just like the assumption that white Western civilization's the greatest. Any attack of white Western civilization is unwarranted or unjustified. But really, in my view, I think that they are obviously angry, right? They're obviously angry. They're obviously in economic straits, right? They're obviously in a position where they've been abandoned by their culture, right? Which I speak about a lot, right? So even though they have like a false assumption baked into what they talk about, I don't know that it's willful ignorance. When presented with things we don't understand, the natural interest is to distrust. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. I mean, I know for a fact that these guys are illiterate. That to me is their biggest failing, right? They don't actually understand this. They don't have a critique of their economic system. They don't have a critique of their economic system. And because they don't have a critique of their economic system, that turns everything into cultural issues, right? Because it has to be. If you're not actually going to talk about the money, if you're not going to talk about the economy, I don't know why that got me, Tom, but that's really... Sentences are just words. I don't know why I think that's so funny, but I definitely do. Sentences are just words, and words are just letters, and letters are just etchings that come from our mind. In reality, all words are just made up. All right. Abortion. Most likely to be opposed to abortion rights, right? Climate change. 42% saying they do not believe human activity contributes to climate change. Hey, that's actually better than the Conservatives. the conservatives had a majority, right? They had 52% that were willing to say they didn't believe in climate change, right? Approval of Donald Trump, of course, 53% of PPC voters say approved. Yeah, only 18%. So really, you can see who these guys are, right? Like, these guys are angry, right? We have to accept that they're very, very angry. They are poor, so they're angry, they're poor, and they are on the far right in regards to issues like abortion, climate change. And I actually make the argument that the reason why the conservatives are struggling so much is because of the PPC. Because I think the PPC is bleeding off, right? That when... And I think it's beyond reasons, like when you listen to PPC guys talk, they talk about like a globalist elite, right? Like they talk about how wealthy people have abandoned us and all of this, right? And they do speak in that kind of communist way that I tend to speak about, which of course reminds everybody, they don't know what communism is. They don't actually have a critique of their system. They do understand that there are rich people who are unaccountable to them making decisions for them, and they don't like that. And you can see they are beginning to see that the Conservative Party are the allies of this globalist elite. I mean, I think if you're saying that you're poor, I don't think you care too much about the tax system, right? Like, they just don't understand that the system of like, lots of these guys are walking around just being like, we just need to make jobs. You know, we just need to make jobs. That what we need is better jobs and get better jobs, right? And that's what a lot of these guys are saying. And they literally do not understand that, like, so your solution to overcoming the global elites is to create jobs to subserviate yourself to the global elites. That's what you're arguing, right? That's genuinely what they're arguing for, right? Because they haven't thought about it, because they don't actually understand the system of capital, and they're not actually that interested in figuring anything out. They're so mad, they're so upset, and they're certainly not going to listen to the communists, right? They're certainly not actually going to sit down and listen and say, like, hey, what are these communists actually saying? What is this system of capital that we all live in? What's going on there? Yeah, they're angry, and that's just it, inquiring. That is just it. Their anger is legitimate, right? It is legitimate, and I don't think that we can dismiss them. And I don't think we should. I don't think we should make fun of them. Obviously we should make fun of them as much as we make fun of anybody, but we shouldn't. I think that if we completely pretend as though their complaints are illegitimate, we're setting ourselves up. We're setting ourselves up. And I think the "get a job" slogan is going to be the hardest thing to overcome. I think that is an entrenched slogan that makes a sort of sense, right? Just get a job. Just get a job. Get a job. You must be lazy. Get a job, right? That's going to be so difficult to overcome for these guys. That these guys are really going to struggle with the just get a job narrative. Like, literally, you can tell them, like, hey, most homeless people have jobs. Hey, like, the minimum wage doesn't actually pay for rent anymore, right? Like, you can tell them all this stuff, and it's the same thing. Well, then just get a better job. Oh, don't work that dumb job. Get a better job. Just get a better job, right? Because these guys live in, like, rural Manitoba, right? They literally work as, like, truckers, construction workers, right? And they're fine workers and they do good work, but they just don't really understand what's happening in the society around them. That they understand that there's this rich class that is making decisions and they don't like it, right? But they don't intrinsically see the connection between themselves and that wealthy person. They don't understand the system that they're in, and even more dangerously, right? They don't like to talk about systems. They don't talk about systems like systemic racism, systemic oppression, right? They don't talk about or understand systems like economic systems, that everyone's an individual making an individual decision in the individual world, and so you should individually just go and get a job because that's how this works, right? That there's just a job there. You can go work a job. It's right there. Just go walk into the coal plant and go get a coal plant job, right? Just shake his hand, right? Look him in the eye, and they'll put you to work, right? Like, we've all heard this. And that kind of mindset is the hurdle. It is the hurdle. And the question becomes, and I don't necessarily have the answer to this, what do we do about it? What do we do about these guys that are walking around saying, just get a job? What do we do? Because they believe it. Because they believe it. And it's not something, they're not going to respond to people being like, or oh, you're so, or okay, boomer, or any of that. They're not going to respond to any of this, right? What do we do about people who are saying just get a job in a society that has hemorrhaged all of the jobs that they would consider worth doing? What do you do about this, right? I don't know. Yeah, people tell me every day to get a job and ignore my narcolepsy and mental health issues. I hate having to defend that. Well, and a lot of, and it's amazing because, like, a lot of the people who are saying get a job, right, have not yet accepted that the economy has changed, that we live in a digital economy. The internet exists now, right? That there is a digital economy, that there is, like, a different mode of living. And a lot of the things they consider not jobs are, like, very valid forms of moving forward and working, right? That, like, people make fun of me for this, for what I'm doing here, right? Hey, I'm reporting on what's going on. I'm organizing. I'm galvanizing people together on a digital platform, and I get made fun of for it. And I'm like, well, go get a real job. And it's like, there are literally people who do this for a living. Like, this is a job, right? I am working a job. You personally don't think that it's valuable for you, and so it's not a job, right? And then, like, when you start really, really, I think you're hitting on it more than anything, Bumble Guppy. Capitalism is dying, and the first step of grief is denial. I think you're right on the money, bud. I think it is worthwhile to talk about it in that way. That we are wiggling between the denial and the anger stage, right? That we're getting a lot of people who are just fucking angry. And they're going to stay angry, right? Because their economic situation is not going to get any better. Do you genuinely think the liberals or the conservatives give a fuck about these prairie folk? How much of a fuck do you think these prairie folk get from Justin Trudeau and Aaron O'Toole? Really? Like, how much do you think these guys actually care? Right? That, like, Aaron O'Toole just sounds like another rich cocksucker, right? He just sounds like another rich prick. Who gives a fuck about him? Justin Trudeau was born with a silver spoon in his ass, right? It's who Don Cherry called the beer drinkers, right? The beer drinkers down at the pub. Oh yeah, the beer drinkers down at the pub, they don't give a crap at all about these guys. These guys don't care about them. They don't care about them at all, right? You know who I like? I like this Julianne Thompson Dubois or whatever, right? Or Mike Fraser. Hey, Mike Fraser, he talks a lot of sense. Right, go listen to Mike Fraser. You like him, and I got to tell you guys, like, straight up, like, everyone should listen to Mike Fraser because he is actually very passionate. He really does believe in what he says, and he's certainly a white supremacist, but he's not like a white supremacist like we need to round up the Jews. He's just a white supremacist who refuses to acknowledge that there is such a thing as systemic racism, right? And if you refuse to acknowledge the reality of the system, then you can fall prey to it and not understand what's happened. Which is exactly what's going on in the PPC for a lot of these guys. Like, don't get me wrong, they're definitely just, like, racists, right? There are definitely people who are just like, yeah, brown people are inferior to us. Within that party, like somebody like Tyler Russell, who runs Canada First, he's 100% like, he knows he's a racist. He thinks it's great, right? He thinks it's great to be a racist. But people like Mike Frazier, like he's not walking around belittling minority groups. And in fact, he talks about minority groups. And in fact, he tries to work with minority groups, right? But his entire ethos is based on the idea that these minorities just need to learn their place. That we can all come together in unity in this system of white supremacy, which I deny. And as long as they subserviate themselves to the system of white supremacy, we can all get along, right? People tell me to get a job even though I already have one. Yeah, some people just want to bark insults rather than trying empathy. Well, because they don't have empathy, and which makes sense because they've never received any. Right? They've never received any empathy from this dying capitalist system, right? That they have had empathy drained out of them. That everything they've ever had to do is compete with one another, and they've had to fight and scrabble for everything they've got. And so all their will and like a lot there is 100% built into the rural conservative ethos that you are doing a man a favor by insulting them with what you consider to be the truth, right? I like to call it sticking in their craw, right? That you say something that you know is going to make them an enemy, that you know is going to get under their skin, because it's going to stick in their craw, right? And a person needs to deal with that if something gets stuck in their craw. They just don't realize, and I mean, maybe this is the way to move forward. Like maybe this is the way to move forward. They just don't recognize how childish they've become, right? That like it's not so much that I think that they're stupid, right? It's just kind of childish. It's just like saying to somebody as if it's a solution, oh, just go get a job, isn't much different to me anymore than saying like Santa's coming, right? Like it's so detached from reality, and it only makes a kind of sense if you refuse to acknowledge that there are systems. There are systems in place, and if you don't know anything about the system, and if you refuse to acknowledge the existence of the system, then you can fall prey to that system. And these guys are walking around and they don't understand anything about the system that they're in, and so everything becomes a cultural issue. And it is to them. It's all about the cultural issues. And it's very, very concerning because they're rising in the polls. They're getting support. I think it's completely possible that Maxime Bernier gets a seat, right? And if and that will only continue to empower and galvanize PPC people, right? That's only going to continue to empower and galvanize them to continue organizing, to continue doing their protests, to continue doing everything they want. And the thing that's dangerous about them, in my view, is that they refuse to acknowledge that systems exist. That's the major, major problem. That they really do genuinely believe that everything is on a one-to-one basis. That they'll talk about equality as if we all are equal. Like, literally, you are born and you are equal to any other person who is born. Like that's literally where they're at. And we have to, like, how do you convince a person who's so convinced they don't live in a system that they live in a system, right? Like, no wonder they deny climate change, right? Like, no wonder they deny any responsibility for truth and reconciliation. No wonder they deny all of this stuff, right? They deny the existence of white supremacy or racism in their own ranks or any of this because they don't acknowledge the existence of systems at all. Like, at all. And you can say that that's stupid, and it is. Like, you can say that if you like. But to me, like, how do you then turn around and convince people who refuse to acknowledge the existence of systems that there are systems that sit... And this touches onto a really core problem, which is that no one wants to believe that they're subservient to larger forces, right? that everyone wants to believe, like, I'm my own man, I pulled up my boots, I stand up straight, I do hard work, all that kind of stuff. And you simply don't want to admit that, no, like, all of that may be true. Like, you did work hard and you had all of this kind of stuff, but you're in a system that you have to subserviate yourself to, right? And if you're unwilling to subserviate yourself to a system at all, well, then you'll easily fall prey to it. These are big problems, right? These are big problems that are manifesting in the PPC that we can see. And we have to, we genuinely have to start confronting this shit. The corporate owners are not going to do it, right? The corporate owners are not going to confront the PPC in kind of any ethical standpoint, because the corporate owners have lost all credibility. The corporate state and the neoliberal system is so bereft of credibility that the PPC is actually above them, right? Like, this is something that I will say outright, that in terms of credibility and correctness and rational thinking, it's actually conservatives and liberals, and then the PPC are above them, right? That I actually have a little bit more respect for PPC voters than I do for conservative and liberal voters. Because at least the PPC are walking around saying something's gone wrong, right? At least they're saying, hey, what's going on? Why are we being abandoned? Why are we not a society? Why are we tearing ourselves apart? What is going on? And sure, they're coming up with stupid reasons, right? Because they don't acknowledge the existence of systems, because they don't acknowledge that they have to be literate and fucking read, right? And they've turned who should be their number one allies, the communists, into their biggest boogeyman. That they literally can just say communism and everybody's supposed to go, communism, right? But they don't know anything about communism. And then when they talk, they actually sound like communists. And they don't realize, and so we've entered a situation in our society where voting for PPC is actually more rational, in my view, than voting conservative and liberal. Because the conservatives and the liberals are going to turn around and keep doing this shit. They're going to keep abandoning people. They're going to keep shitting on the society. They're going to keep doing everything they can to keep you in wage slavery and keep everybody desperate and keep everybody poor and keep everybody turning and biting at each other, right? That's conservatives and liberals, right? So at least the PPC are walking around saying there's a problem. Yep, you heard it here first, guys. Conservatives, liberals, PPC, NDP, Green. And the Bloc is in there somewhere too. For real, I have more respect for PPC voters than I have for conservative and liberal voters. If I find out you voted liberal, I think you're worse than a People's Party candidate. Yeah, I think I'm happy to say that. Like, if I find out you voted liberal or conservative, I'm just like, oh, so you're like the bottom of the, like, you're exceptionally stupid. Like, you're stupider than a PPC guy. Oh, okay. Because at least the PPC are voting to change something while you're voting to keep this going? Really? You're voting to keep this going. You're voting to keep the machine that's destroying all of us going. That's a big yikes. That's a big yikes, right? And my large critique for the NDP is that they refuse to galvanize this anger. That there is a mass anger that exists in the populace. It's manifesting in the PPC, and the NDP refuse to galvanize it. And at this point, I have to call it a refusal, right? That they see the anger in front of them, and instead of saying, hey, we can galvanize that anger, right? They are choosing to simply say, oh, no, that's fine, that anger, it'll diffuse, or it's over there, or whatever, right? That they're not actually grabbing a hold of that anger and using it, right? They're just not. Theoretically, in capitalism, if a bank fails, it fails. What system do we live in if the state just props them up then? Well, there's a classic definition, right? There's a classic definition that comes out of the mouth of Mussolini himself, right? One of the founders of fascism, that says, fascism is better called corporatism because it is the merger of business and state. Very much how a theocracy works, where you have the church and the state and they merge. Well, if you have private business interests, right, and state power merging, that should be called fascism, because that's what Mussolini called it. And you have a situation like down in the United States where the Federal Reserve is a private bank that has merged itself with the state sector. That's fascism. Like, it's like the definition of fascism. I noticed that a lot of poor conservative people are surprised when they talk to socialists and communists and realize that they agree with them. Yes, because inquiring mind, like, what's going on is that we're in a position now where being anti-communist, right? Like I'm fine if you say I don't necessarily agree with your positions or all that kind of stuff, but literally saying you're anti-communist, right, at this stage in the game is not very much different than saying I don't like marijuana because I watched that movie Reefer Madness, right? It's on that same plane that, like, when I start to talk to people who are anti-communist at this stage in the game, I literally am talking to somebody who has just been so deluded by anti-communist propaganda that they don't know what the truth is at all. And then when you actually start talking to them, and like maybe they get over the fact that you're a communist, or maybe you don't even reveal it and you're just talking to them, right? Well, turns out that when they actually get confronted with the truth, when they get confronted with the literature, when it's not about the propaganda anymore, they're completely on board with it. Why, you might ask? Because communism is correct. Because Marxist-Leninist theory is accurate, right? And it rings true. And when you actually hear it, right, there's a truth to it. Just how if you say, like, hey, maybe we should care about one another, right? There's a truth to it. That it supersedes all this propagandistic nonsense. And it ties into what I was saying before, which is why we shouldn't let people lie in our society, right? That if somebody is telling explicit lies, it should be punishable. I just don't understand this. I don't understand why we live in a society where free speech dictates that, oh yeah, I can lie to people in order to commit fraud against them in massive, large-scale societal ways. Fuck that. Fuck that. Same with any multi-billion corporation. Should go broke as well. Yeah, if you can't run a business, then lose it. Businesses have no rights. But my favorite childhood movies told me communists were bad. Since when does that matter, right? All my favorite childhood movies, all the heroes of those movies literally were walking around murdering Nazis. The whole movie, like Indiana Jones, like walking around with a pistol, being like Nazi, 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 right? Like you could kill a Nazi in a movie, and everybody would go, ha! Like nobody gave a fuck about Nazis, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to be like, oh, Nazis, you know, freedom of speech dictates that we should allow Nazis to stand up and say, fuck that, fuck that. Nazis have no rights. Fascism is the open terrorist dictatorship of the most reactionary, most chauvinistic, and most imperialist elements of finance capital. Palmiro Togliatti. Yeah, I mean, there's something about that too. Like, and I mean, in my view, I don't really see much of a difference between fascism and capitalism. Ultimately, that like, it's like telling me, oh, a dude, like usually he comes by and he pats me on the head, right? I walk by and he pats me on the head. He walks by and he pats me on the head. But one day I came by and we had a fight about wages or something, about pay. Like I work for this guy, right? And so he grabbed my collar and pulled me up and he said, if you ever talk to me about this again, I'll beat the shit out of you. Then he put me down and patted me on the head. Well, is this fist a fascist and this fist is a capitalist? No. That in my view, fascism actually works for the benefit of the capitalist class. That this separation between capitalism and fascism implies that, oh, no, capitalism is a justifiable system that actually does work. It's not completely corrupt and evil from the outset. No, and in fact, when capitalism acts like capitalism and destroys everyone and causes lots of problems, we can call that cut line fascism. So we'll spend all of our energy talking about fascism and being like, holy shit, fascism. We got to talk about fascism, and never actually acknowledge that that's just capitalism. That capitalism and fascism are actually the same. That it's completely normal for the state sector and the business sector to merge under a capitalist model. That it's not a transition to a fascist situation or anything. That capitalism is fascism and always has been. It operates exactly the same way as fascism does on an economic level. It operates the same way on a cultural level. It has the same outcomes, for Christ's sake. It has the same fucking outcomes, for Christ's sake. Was it the fascists that nuked Japan? Did fascists nuke Japan? Did fascists commit a genocide against the First Nations people? Did fascists enslave the black population of Africa? No, that was all capitalists. Right? So tell me what the difference is between these two genuinely, right? I don't see a transition. I don't see like a shift. I don't see a moment where it goes from capitalism to fascism. I see capitalism protecting itself from us by saying, no, those were the fascists. They're the same. There's no difference. It's all just another layer of propaganda. That's why we need channels like yours to counter that anti-communist propaganda. That is right, inquiring mind. Well, and also I think the weed legalization movement, right? That movement of weed legalization that came through and is still working throughout the United States has actually been the most effective thing, because there was a lot of anti-marijuana propaganda that just fell apart. But all the propaganda's there. You can still go see it. Right? You can still see Reefer Madness. You can still see how stupid it is. It's stupid, right? And once you see through forms of propaganda, you can see through other forms of propaganda. And if the same people who are standing up saying marijuana is bad are also saying communism is bad, it's pretty easy to put together that, like, if they're wrong about that, they're probably wrong about that too, right? Never forget, the man who led me to Marxist-Leninism, the man who convinced me finally to call myself a communist, was Jordan Peterson. Because Jordan Peterson stood up and said Marxist-Leninism is evil. And I thought to myself, that's probably wrong. And so I went and did some reading, and I just was like, no, this is accurate. Like, this is completely accurate to not only my lived experience, but just like literally how the system actually works. And so I became a communist. Thanks, Peterson. You did it. And yeah, Fauci should be punished for lying to Congress. Are you kidding? Especially if you're lying to Congress. Like, it's one thing, like, if I tell you, like, a lie on the street, it's just between you and me, right? But if I'm a fucking institution that is going in front of our elected officials, and I'm sitting in front of the elected officials during a conference and I fucking lie, right? And it's shown that it's not just a mistake or an error. Right? This is one thing that I think, like, people always say to me, like, well, who defines what's a lie? And then, oh, well, you could go and arrest people and all this kind of stuff. No, you can confront them with the lie, and they can go, oh, I was wrong about that. Oh, my mistake, right? Or they can say, oh, well, I think this is just misunderstanding. I can say this, that, and the other thing, right? They can change their position. They can do lots of things. But if they are standing in front of you and they are telling you a lie that they insist is true, even when it's not, well, how much money are they receiving for that, do you think? Get fucked. Yeah, I loved It's a Wonderful Life, was a Christmas tradition. Fascism is the knife in capitalism's pocket. But, like, why are we pretending as though capitalism doesn't do shit stuff? Why are we pretending like the capitalists aren't walking around ganking people? Like, what I don't get this. I don't get that there's this, like, idea that has pervaded our society that says, like, capitalists are nice and they pretend like they like us and then they reveal some hidden thing. Like, no, they don't. They're walking around like big fucking assholes holding onto guns and weapons right in front of your face, being capitalists, being like, come to work or starve or die, right? Like, they're not pretending. When did they ever pretend? When has there ever been a moment where they've actually pretended as though they are nice, right? They've always been sociopathic assholes. That's always been the case. Fascism's not the knife in capitalism's pocket. Fascism's just the name of the knife that they wield in front of you every day. Like it is again the distinguishing, attempting to create a delineation between fascism and capitalism works for the benefit of the capitalist, because they can hide behind it, because they can say, oh no, in an effort to protect their entire system, they can be like, oh no, that's fascism, so let's all focus on that, right? No, it's the same fucking thing, right? That if an effective and efficient liar and a sociopath will always erect decoys, will always put up decoys for you to not pay attention to the central core issue, which is capitalism. And capitalism acts exactly like fascism does. They'll just put up a straw man and let you whinge on that for a generation. Oh no, it was fascism that did that. Yeah, oh, pay attention, Hitler, Mussolini, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, fascism did all that. Well, the psychopaths, Winston Churchill and his ilk, and FDR and all these guys, continued to go along their merry way with their capitalist system that no one bothered to scrutinize. Fascism is just the mask comes off. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, the mask thing is fair, and it's interesting that we live in a society right now where there's like an anti-mask movement. So there's literally people who want to be mask off, and it turns out that they align with fascists. It's very delightful, right? That they're literally having mask off protests, right? We should try to convince them to call it that, right? Call it a mask off protest. No mask, mask off, right? They know. Like, they know. Because of consumerism, they give us nice stuff that we have to pay for. But we have nice looking things. And also a huge campaign to brainwash us to believe that we should want these things. Yeah, well, but again, I think that this is the classic capitalist grift. The classic capitalist grift is wedge yourselves between otherwise functioning systems, right? So I make things that are pretty for people to have. I think that people do that. I know people that do that, who just make things that are pretty, that they want people to have. Because that's who they are. Because they want to do that, right? They want to make things that are pretty, and they want other people to have those things, right? And so you have a person who wants pretty things and a person who makes pretty things, and instead of these two people just going, and existing together in the world and being very pleased about that arrangement, some fucking capitalist's got to wedge himself in between them, erect a checkpoint, be like, there must be an exchange of currency, or else this is not valuable whatsoever. Exchange currency, please, or it isn't valuable, has no value, is not part of the economy, is not part of the system whatsoever. If you just make pretty things and you want pretty things and interact, valueless, completely worthless. And certainly to me, because I didn't make any money, right? So I need a person making pretty things who then gives me all of their surplus value, making pretty things. And then I need another person who wants pretty things, who will give me the wage that I pay them, right? The surplus value of the wage that I pay them. And I win on both sides because I'm a fucking capitalist. And capitalists are totally fucking parasites. Right? That's their whole shtick. And if you got rid of the capitalists, well, guess what would happen? There would be people who made pretty things because they want to and they like to, and there would be people who would get those pretty things because they want them. And this idea that, oh, well, you can only have pretty things with capitalism, fuck that. You know what we end up with capitalism? We end up with fucking skyscrapers that look like boxes. We end up with just like our whole society is just filled with these glass condos that look like shit and are going to fall over in 50 years. Like, all capitalism does is fill the society with cheap garbage that everyone hates. Like, it's literal, and now we're getting to the point in our culture where hating our culture is our culture. That's what it is. That anytime the capitalists actually make anything, we all gather and go, "Ugh," to it. Here's your $20. Like, we should just let people who want to make pretty things do it. And I don't know why that's such a fucking problem for us. What, did an ad come through? What happened? What happened? Ad blockers? What are you guys talking about ads for? For real, did they put an ad on my stream? Did that happen? Let me know. They don't tell me shit. If they put an ad on my stream, I'm actually quite happy about that. I gotta tell you. Is my stream still going? What's going on? Yeah. Video resolution. Yeah, it's still going. All right. I'm just gonna keep moving on. So, always worth pointing out the 600 cases here in Ontario. We have sort of plateaued, right? We're not like Scott. We're not off to the races yet, but like we're sort of like on this wiggle line where we're just going on. But everyone assumes that this is just going to go, right? Hope it doesn't. Hope it doesn't. And I mean, we know that the Delta variant is killing kids. Like, that's happening throughout the United States now. That in Miami, 7 kids have died because of COVID. Oh, I see, Bumblegupper. Got you. The, like, and we're sending kids back to school in September, right? We're reopening the schools, which I think is a mistake. But so far, so good, right? The cases are sort of like, well, and isn't the ad system so odd? Like, literally, I'm going to give you money just to tell people I exist. Like, that's it. So, like, and it encourages this sort of odd growth. Because you're not growing, like, in your own community. You're not growing where you're planted. You're, like, reaching your tendrils out into the world and all that. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. We live in a crazy world, though. So we now have photographic evidence that people are paid to share and upvote pro-conservative stories on Reddit, right? That here is a job posting that someone has put up that is about going to conservative posters and upvoting their shit. Like, that's what this job is. So it's like, and it's just being nakedly done. It's just outright, like, yeah, we will pay you to go and upvote conservative stuff that other people post. Oh, okay. So it's getting a bit on the nose, right? It's getting a bit, like, obvious. But you guys know me. I say that all the time. Things are getting more and more obvious. The anti-vaccine protest.
There was widespread condemnation from politicians and those in the healthcare sector ahead of a planned anti-vaccine mandate protest outside hospitals here in Toronto and across the country. For more on this, we go live to CP24's Courtney Heels on Hospital Row. Courtney?
And Chanel, we can tell you a couple of protesters have already arrived. They are standing outside of the hospitals along University Avenue. Healthcare workers I've talked to say that this isn't the place for a protest. They support the right to protest, but they feel these healthcare workers aren't the ones making the decision when it comes to the vaccine mandate. So the concern shouldn't be here. It should be over at Queen's Park. Let's talk more about this. I want to bring in Dr. Doris Greenspan with the Registered Nurses Association. Doctor, thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with us this afternoon. We are hearing that some nurses and some medical professionals don't feel comfortable going to work today, given these protests are planned for this afternoon. Are you hearing this from your members?
Absolutely, we are. This is adding stress and adding aggravation in already a very tired workforce. This is a workforce that has been 18 months giving it all. They do not and they should not have this aggravation and sometimes affronts on their safety right as they go to work. Protests are the right of democratic countries. Take them to Queen's Park, take them to Parliament Hill. Our hospitals are not the place. And patients are already very concerned. I have had 2 patients approaching me. They actually, one of them canceled the meeting today, canceled the appointment. This is outrageous, outrageous. And those that are organizing the protest, in our view, have in other agendas, not only the agenda of vaccines, but they will find any excuse to organize their movement. And, hospitals are not the right place. They are doing it at hospitals to call for higher attention. And the premier must step in. And I did speak with him and I asked him, he must step in today and prohibit protests outside of any of our healthcare facilities, not only hospitals, any healthcare.
Yeah, the reason why these protests are happening, by the way, right? Like there's two really weird and wacky things going on in my view. One is that there are people who genuinely think that COVID is fake, right? If you're at that level, I don't know how you recover, right? I don't know how you recover from this. That there are people who are actually convinced that COVID is not real. And it's literally like, go talk to a nurse who works in the ER, like for literally 5 minutes. Just like, it's so easy, right? But I also think that there are people who are planning protests like this at hospitals and stuff to find out who among their ranks are like the true believers, like who can actually be mobilized, who will actually go and do some more nefarious sort of high-level stuff. And I almost guarantee that at this stage in the game, that within the protest movement that I've seen, the anti-mask protest movement, there's got to be at least 5 guys who are like, I would consider your core, right? Who are organizing along very strict fascist lines, that they are going against minority groups. They are organizing external actions or other actions, and who are organizing like a central core group of people for which to, create and act nefariously in the environment. And that's what I see these protests as. The hospital protests, I'm just like, yeah, they're just trying to convince, like, just try to normalize getting more extreme, step by step, more extreme, right? Look up YouTube Vance to get away from ads on YouTube without paying. Rat. Loaf of Kropotkin. I mean, you guys do understand that ultimately there probably will be ads on this stuff if I continue doing this, and that those ads will probably pay me. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll see. We'll see. I know, I hate that too, though. I fucking hate that too. I wish that capitalism would just go away. I wish I could just do this, right? Without having to fucking sell myself. Here is, in my view, the capitalist system, or the reason why we're having such a struggle in our political system, right? 95% support moving away from capitalism, highest amongst women, right? So strongly support, somewhat support, 35 support. 25% oppose, with 31% being like neither support or oppose, and 8% saying they don't know, right? So this is manifesting in our politics for sure, that people... I am shocked to see the number as low as 35. I would think that it would, and especially like people who are being sort of like murr about it. I'm just like, not too surprised to see the opposition crowd being at 25%, because that's basically your conservative support right there, right? It's always going to be about 25% of the society thinks that the system is working when it isn't, right? But and if you break it down, respondents who say support, the younger you get, the more support you have for moving away from capitalism. Right? 43% of respondents between 18 to 34, 43% if you're male, 49% if you're a woman, 35 to 54, 32% if you're a man, 39% if you're a woman, and then even 55 plus, you've got 24% for men, 30%, the region where the most support for moving away from capitalism exists is the Atlantic provinces. Then you go down to Quebec, Ontario, and I don't know why Alberta is separated from the prairies. Thank you very much. But Alberta is even higher than BC, right? And then party identification, no big surprises here. If you're an NDPer, you're far more likely to want to move away from capitalism. If you're a Green or other, you're 40%, unaligned 32%. Even the Liberals are sitting at 37%, and you got to look at the cons to see anything lower than 30%, which is 19% amongst the Conservatives. So I wonder who's opposing it, right? I wonder who's opposing it. I wonder where the rot is coming from. Yeah, I wonder. It's the FYGM phenomenon. I have no idea what that is. So I'm going to play this song because Crouching asked me to. It sounds okay. This is a song I wrote when I was... I had just got let go from the toy store job that I was working, which I really missed that toy store job, right? I was like in front of the community. I was part of the community. I felt like I was doing a community service. I worked really, really hard. I really, really worked hard to get into an assistant manager position in that store. I was looking forward to moving forward as the assistant manager of that store. And of course, then, capitalism does capitalism, and here we are. And so I wrote this song after that event occurred. Gotta sleep another month inside this car. The wage they pay me with don't get me very far. The chains that hold me break me down, but they don't scar. Can't even drink away my blues inside a bar. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. Another day won't help that pain inside your back. The days get harder, but it's too hard to keep track. They keep you tied before your soul opens a crack. And God don't care what monkeys think about the facts. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. So sit atop your pile of bones and bloody gold, and human sacrifice don't stop you being old. At least you'll die before the bomb you set explodes. We're gonna burn to death while doing what we're told. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. Yeah. Yeah, man, I love that song. I love that song. That's just a big FU song right there. Let's bring back some 90s grunge. Let's bring back some 90s grunge and tell these capitalists how much they suck. And you know what I love about that song? I came to realize something about that song, why this song slaps, is that I know for a fact that if Billy Corgan, Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, Kurt Cobain, I know for a fact that if I played that song in front of those guys, they would say that song slaps. Absolutely, they would. I gotta get off my ass and just record some of this shit, dude. I just gotta record it and make it sound good, right? Start spreading it around. Because I know what would happen is that you guys would pay like $2 for it or whatever. And then you'd start showing it to your friends and shit. And then eventually this COVID thing ends and suddenly I'm doing a live show and then a bunch of you guys would come out for it. And we'd have a great time. Wouldn't it be great? Right? Play a couple of these tunes and you guys would have let's all drink beer and smoke weed and have some fun. Right? Oh yeah. That's a great song. I'm going to move into this other song. I call this the Care Bear Stare against the capitalist death cult. While that one I think is like a straight out like rebellious protest song, this one's more about healing. Right? It's more about healing. No, I know Audacity. It's Nova Scotia. It has nothing to do with my inability to do it technically. It has everything to do with my inability to get my shit together. That's it. I'm your classic like artist type, right? I move with the flows of the energy, and I paint with the wind, right? Like that kind of dumb shit. And so then you're just like, okay, John, now we're gonna sit down and we're gonna work with a program and all that kind of stuff. And like the artist guy inside of me is like, but that really mellows my jam. And I don't get to flow with the effervescent nature of the high-minded being in the ultraverse. And it's just like, shut the fuck up. Sit down and actually fucking do it, you dumb fucking idiot. Nah. But it is kind of coming to that, where it's literally just like, is there any reason you're not just sitting down and recording this shit, John? And I'm just like, I don't wanna. It's like, shut the fuck up. Oh, all right. Let's. I'm gonna. With all of that. Yeah, a true leftist would find a comrade that does good recording stuff. Many hands make light work. That's actually a very nice sentiment. Yeah, that is a nice sentiment for sure. No, and and it's not like I have this mic. It's sitting right here, right? Like it's a decent quality mic. It does okay, right? I got this guitar. It's a decent mic, right? And then it's just like Just get your fucking shit together. That's it. Okay, here we go. So, if you haven't heard the song before, I suspect by now you guys all have, but I call this the Care Bear Stare against neoliberal capitalism, because if everybody on the planet started to sing this song and created together the vision of what the future should look like that exists within this piece, there's nothing the neoliberal capitalists could do about it. There's absolutely nothing they could do about it. This is called Antarctica is Covered in Ice. That's not Antarctica is Covered in Ice. Oh my god, have I forgotten how to play the song? I haven't played this song in fucking 2 days. Are you serious? Because I'm starting to play a different song. I'm playing, okay, hold on. Oh my god. Give me a second, guys. Oh my goodness. What a disaster. Come on. C, G, A minor, F, yeah. Oh my god. There it is. Holy fuck. See? You just got a little taste. You got a little taste of how my brain is. I've only played the song for 2 months straight in front of you guys every single fucking day. got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I looked up at the red and smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's sleeping in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I believe that we can do it. I know that we can. Because the solution to the problem could not be easier. We don't need to make something. We don't need to create something. We don't even need to work particularly hard at it. That the problems that will be created by us ceasing this endless war against the earth, will be far easier to manage than the problems created by us continuing this war. That the earth was a garden before we got here. It will be a garden once we're gone. And if we choose instead to bear witness to the enormous, majestic power of the earth healing itself, then all we have to do is stop. Oh, it's so comically and cartoonishly easy. It's so comically and cartoonishly easy. That the earth must view us like a baby. Like we have to be a baby in the view of the earth. Just a squalling, sniveling child that's just throwing shit around, ripping shit up, tearing stuff apart. That our entire procedure of exhuming the mass graves of the oil fields in order to burn them in our infernal machines, that entire process is not too much different from a baby pulling his mother's hair and playing with toys. Oh, yeah. We really are stupid, man. Like, we really, really are. We're very, very stupid people. And I think the stupidest thing that we've done as a species is convince ourselves that we're smart. I think it's that. I think it's this convincing ourselves that we are actually in charge of this place. That's probably the stupidest thing that we've ever done. That no reasonable person with a thinking mind can genuinely believe that we're in charge of this place. What are you even talking about? There are rules. There are rules that we can't break. And if you do break them, there are actual consequences. But our society is so unfamiliar with the concept of rules. We're so unfamiliar with the concept of hard-lined rules that have consequences that I doubt that we can even truly perceive or understand that there are rules to this place. Obviously there are. If you fill the atmosphere with carbon, then the temperature will increase and the sun will burn this place down. That's a rule, right? That's a rule. With consequences if you break them. And the solutions that are coming out of the capitalist class, like Bezos' solution of taking all polluting enterprise and putting it into space is exactly how a child would solve its problems. It's exactly how a child would solve its problems. And it has such a, like, there's so little effort put into thinking about that. There's so little effort put into thinking about what that would look like, or could that even be done? Could that even be achieved? That he's just like saying these things in order to continue justifying his own exploitation of the earth he doesn't give a shit about at all. Yeah. You know, I'm going to play one more for you guys. This is a song that I'm starting to warm on a little bit more. I wrote this in my 20s when I realized that capitalism is not gonna deliver on anything. That it's all just grifting. Like, the whole thing is just grifting. Yeah, we power the rocket by burning the garbage in the engine. Yeah, exactly. And I've been a little tentative of playing this particular song because, I don't know, it feels very vulnerable. I feel very vulnerable playing it, and I worry that people are turn away from that. But I've received enough positive feedback from you guys in the chat that I think I'm going to keep playing this one. I think it's a good solidarity builder, let's say. Anyway, here it is. I call this one I Don't Remember. All God's angels, they won't comfort me, won't help me with my heartache, won't help me with my pain. And my demons stopped amusing me. They remind me of my failures, and they'll haunt me till the end. And I don't remember how it's supposed to be. Living life like I was born free. I'm so beat down, I can't find my way up off the ground. And what's a man supposed to do? What's a man gotta say to succeed while still staying true, and to make it safely through each day? And I don't remember how it's supposed to be. Living life like I was born free. I'm so beat down, I can't find my way up off the ground. And what I want with all of my might is to live under God's blue sky. And I'll struggle and work and fight for that right, and I'll be that way until I die. Yes, I will. And all I want is to live like I was born, and all I want is to live like I was born, and all I want is to live like I was born free. Yeah, but I don't remember how that's supposed to be. Living life like I was born free. I'm so beat down, I can't find my way up off the ground. Oh, that one's like a ghost that comes by and settles in. That's how some of these songs are, you know? They're like ghosts that come and settle in And I feel them leave. I feel them go away. And I'm not saying it's a literal ghost. I'm not saying there's like literally a ghost standing there and it comes in and he like literally leaves. But that's just what it feels like. You start playing the tune and you can feel the spirit sort of settle in. You can feel it. And as the song is going on, it's not really you that's there. That the song itself has created a spirit that sort of goes beyond who you are. And you kind of disappear and the song takes over. And then when it ends, you can feel it leave. You can feel it leave. That's your crazy existentialism for the day. This Hubu-Jubu weirdo, what a weird guy this John guy is. He believes all kinds of crazy stuff. He thinks ghosts inhabit him. Fine, whatever. I won't talk about it anymore. J-Lo. So, thus ends the musical interlude. Let's head back to the daily news. I think a good thing to do right after all of that. I found a really great Chris Hedges article, which he wrote and released on September 11th. The 20th anniversary of September 11th. And I think this is, it's always pleasurable to read out loud someone who is as prolific and as intelligent as a man like Chris Hedges. So I'm going to treat myself, and I hope you come along for the ride. This is entitled, "We Americans Kill with an Incoherent Fury. The evil we do is the evil we get." The hijackers who carried out the attacks on 9/11, like all radical jihadist groups in the Middle East, spoke to us in the murderous language we taught them. I was in Times Square in New York City shortly after the second plane banked and plowed into the South Tower. The crowd looking up at the Jumbotron gasped in dismay at the billowing black smoke and the fireball that erupted from the tower. There was no question now that the two attacks on the Twin Towers were acts of terrorism. The early supposition that perhaps the pilot had a heart attack or lost control of the plane when it struck the North Tower 17 minutes earlier vanished with the second attack. The city fell into a collective state of shock. Fear palpitated throughout the streets. Would they strike again? Where? Was my family safe? Should I go to work? Should I go home? What did it mean? Who would do this? Why? The explosions and collapse of the towers, however, were to me intimately familiar. I had seen it before. This was the familiar language of empire. I had watched these incendiary messages dropped on southern Kuwait and Iraq during the First Persian Gulf War and descend with thundering concussions in Gaza and Bosnia. The calling card of empire, as was true in Vietnam, is tons of lethal ordnance dropped from the sky. The hijackers spoke to America in the idiom we taught them. The ignorance, masquerading as innocence, of Americans, mostly white Americans, was nauseating. It was the second worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. It was the greatest act of terrorism in American history. It was an incomprehensible act of barbarity. The stunning, naive rhetoric which saturated the media saw the blues artist Willie King sit up all night and write his song, Terrorized. Now you talk about terror, he sang. I've been terrorized all my days. But it was not only black Americans who were familiar with the endemic terror built into the machine of white supremacy, capitalism, and empire, but those overseas whose empire for decades sought to subdue, dominate, and destroy. They knew there is no moral difference between those who fire hellfire and cruise missiles or pilot militarized drones obliterating wedding parties, village gatherings or families, and suicide bombers. They knew there is no moral difference between those who carpet bomb North Vietnam or southern Iraq and those who fly planes into buildings. In short, they knew that evil spawned evil. America was not attacked because the hijackers hated us for our values. America was not attacked because the hijackers followed the Quran, which forbids suicide and the murder of women and children. America was not attacked because of a clash of civilizations. America was attacked because the virtues we espouse are a lie. We were attacked for our hypocrisy. We were attacked for the campaigns of industrial slaughter that are our primary way of speaking with the rest of the planet. Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense in the summer of 1965, called the bombing raids, which would eventually kill hundreds of thousands of civilians north of Saigon, a form of communication with the communist government in Hanoi. The lives of Iraqis, Afghanis, Syrians, Libyans, and Yemenis are as precious as the lives of those killed in the Twin Towers. But this understanding, this ability to see the world as the world saw us, eluded Americans who, refusing to acknowledge the blood on their own hands, instantly bifurcated the world into good and evil, us versus them, the blessed and the damned. The country drank deep of the dark elixir of nationalism, the heady elevation of us as a noble and wronged people. The flip side of nationalism is always racism, and the poisons of racism and hate infected the American nation to propel it into the greatest strategic blunder in its history, one from which it will never recover. We did not and do not grasp that we are the mirror image of those we seek to destroy. We too kill with an inchoate fury. Over the past 2 decades, we have extinguished the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who never sought to harm the United States or were involved in the attacks on American soil. We too use religion, in our case the Christian faith, to mount a jihad or crusade. We too go to war to fight phantoms of our own creation. I walked down the West Side Highway that morning to the moonscape the Twin Towers had become after they collapsed. Climbing over the rubble, hacking and coughing because of the toxic fumes from the burning asbestos, jet fuel, lead, mercury, cellulose, and construction debris, I saw the tiny bits of human flesh and body parts that were all that remained from the tower's nearly 3,000 victims. It was obvious no one in the towers, when they collapsed, survived. The manipulation of the images, however, had already begun. The scores of jumpers, those who leapt to their deaths before the collapses, were censored from the live broadcasts. They seemed to wait for turns. They often fell singly or in pairs, sometimes with improvised parachutes made from drapes, sometimes replicating the motions of swimmers. They reached speeds of 150 miles an hour during the 10 seconds it took before they hit the pavement. The bodies made a sickening thud on impact. All who saw them fall spoke of this sound. The mass suicide was one of the pivotal events of 9/11, but it was immediately expunged from public consciousness. The jumpers did not fit into the myths the nation demanded. The hopelessness and despair were too disturbing. It exposed our smallness and fragility. It illustrated that there are levels of suffering and fear that lead us to willingly embrace death. The jumpers reminded us that one day we will all face the one choice, and that is how we will die, not how we will live. The story being fabricated out of the ashes of the Twin Towers was a story of resilience, heroism, courage, and self-sacrifice, not collective suicide. So the mass murder and the mass suicide were replaced with an encomium to the virtues and prowess of the American spirit. The nation fed this narrative, soon parroted back the cliches about terror. We became what we abhorred. The 9/11 deaths were used to justify the invasion of Afghanistan. Shock and awe, targeted assassinations, torture, offshore penal colonies, gunning down families at checkpoints, airstrikes, drone attacks, missile strikes, and the killing of dozens, and soon hundreds, and then thousands, and later tens of thousands, and finally hundreds of thousands of innocent people. The corpses piled up in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, and Pakistan, justified by our beautified dead. 20 years later, these dead haunt us like Banquo's ghost. The intoxication of violence, the anodyne of war, is a poison. It condemns critical thought as treason. Its call to patriotism is little more than collective self-worship. It imparts a godlike power and license to destroy not only things, but other human beings. But war is ultimately about betrayal, as the defeated in Afghanistan elucidates. Betrayal of the young by the old, betrayal of idealists by cynics, betrayal of soldiers and Marines by war profiteers and politicians. War, like all idols, begins by demanding the sacrifice of others, but ends with the demand for self-sacrifice. The Greeks, like Sigmund Freud, grasped that war is the purest expression of the death instinct, the desire to exterminate all systems of life, including, ultimately, our own. Ares, the Greek god of war, was frequently drunk, quarrelsome, impetuous, and a lover of violence for its own sake. He was hated by nearly all the other gods, except the god of the underworld, Hades, to whom he delivered a steady stream of new souls. Ares' sister, Eris, is the goddess of chaos and strife, spread rumor and jealousy to fan the flame of war. The defeat in Afghanistan was not forced a reckoning. The media coverage does not acknowledge the defeat, replacing it with the absurd idea that by withdrawing we defeated ourselves. The plight of women under Taliban rule and the frantic efforts of the elites and those who collaborated with the foreign occupation forces to flee are myopically used to ignore the 2 decades of unmitigated terror and death we perpetuated on the Afghan people. This moral fragmentation, where we define ourselves by tangential and often fictitious acts of goodness, as a psychological escape hatch. It allows us to avoid looking at who we are and what we have done. This willful blindness is what the psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton calls doubling, the division of the self into 2 functioning wholes, so that the part self acts as an entire self. This doubling, Lifton noted, is often done outside of awareness, and it is an essential ingredient to carrying out evil. If we refuse to see ourselves as we are, if we cannot shatter the lie perpetuated by our moral fragmentation, there is no hope of redemption. The gravest danger we face is the danger of alienation, not only from the world around us, but from ourselves. There are a few people walking around this world that are a gift to us, and I'll be very sad to see them go. Chris Hedges is going to be with us for a little bit more time unless something serious happens. But we are going to lose people like Noam Chomsky. We've already really lost someone like Michael Parenti, who apparently has become so fragile that he can't really speak any longer. And we need to be ready to replace them. We need to be ready to replace them when they go. That the story of Christ, the resurrection story, is a story of a man with a message. And by insisting that he is resurrected, we insist that his message will not die with him. And that, in my view, is the true objective of any serious person, is to take the truths that are being told by the people around us and resurrect them, continue bringing them back. Hi, Reagan. Hi, Wilsey. I don't think I've seen you here before. BLM. The Black Lives Matter movement is where the truth lies in our society at this moment, certainly. I would love to interview some people in that movement, especially here in Toronto. I would love to connect with them. And you can see that that movement is being taken seriously. My hope is that the Black Lives Matter movement maintains its prowess as a street-based protest movement. That you can see the machine, the political machine throughout the United States and here in Canada, attempting to diffuse it, attempting to funnel it into the halls of power in order to diffuse it, in order to make it less powerful, to defang it, and to convince people that instead of taking to the streets where the power is, that we can funnel that energy into a room of old white men. That's not how anything happens. That's not how any movement succeeds. That in the end, it is going to require that the halls of power in the United States are surrounded. George Floyd was my favorite singer, Rip the Legend. Oh, what's happening in my chat all of a sudden? So, moving on. A great article coming out from the World Socialist website. Canada Conservatives rebrand themselves, the better to pursue austerity and imperialist aggression. I don't think I'll read this one out loud, but it really does point out to us, in a very clear sort of way, you know what? What the hell? What the hell? I'll read this one out loud, because this gives a lot of clarity, I think, that we all kind of know. Like, we're all aware that the Conservatives are just bullshitting us, right? But an article like this really goes out of its way to really lay it all out there. So I think it's worth listening to just to understand that the Conservatives are still quite dangerous to us. Canada Conservatives rebrand themselves, the better, to pursue austerity and imperialist aggression. From Keith Jones. If the opinion polls are correct, Justin Trudeau and his Liberals have bled support to both the Conservatives and Canada's Social Democrats, the NDP, in recent weeks, and will fall short of winning a parliamentary majority in the September 20th federal election. Indeed, it increasingly appears that the Conservatives will win a plurality of both votes and seats. They could well displace the Liberals, who are currently polling around 32% support compared to the Tories' 34% as Canada's government. The corporate media has played a major role in boosting Conservative fortunes. It has touted Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole as a moderate, even red Tory, and promoted his claim that he heads a different and open Conservative party. This is a sham and a fraud. O'Toole served as a cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's hard-right conservative government and staunchly defends its record of austerity, militarism, and reaction. Like their US Republican and British Tory allies, Canada's Conservatives have for decades shifted ever further right and have served as incubators for far-right forces like the People's Party of O'Toole's one-time cabinet colleague, Maxime Bernier. O'Toole became party leader by pillorying his chief opponent, Harper's Defense and Foreign Minister Peter MacKay, as a closet liberal, and by courting the party's substantial anti-abortion and anti-gay religious right faction. In the 13 months since, he has made 4 major changes to conservative messages and policy. He has repeatedly affirmed... Sorry about that, guys. Oh my goodness. I'm so popular. People are just trying to get a hold of me all over the place. Look at me. Dealing with the chat, dealing with the phone, dealing with my pug, dealing with you guys. I hope you guys are doing well out there. Sorry about the stuff going on in chat. If you've been seeing it, it's just ridiculous. Thanks so much for not rising to the bait, guys. That's how we should deal with that kind of thing. O'Toole became party leader by pillorying his chief opponent, Harper's Defense and Foreign Minister Peter MacKay, as a closet liberal, and by courting the party's substantial anti-abortion, anti-gay religious right faction. In the 13 months since, he has made 4 major changes to conservative messaging and policy. He has repeatedly affirmed his support for abortion and LGBTQ rights, defied the express wish of last spring's Conservative Party convention, and elaborated a policy to fight man-made climate change, outlined a package of purported pro-worker policies, and most recently tempered the Conservatives' demand for a quick, post-pandemic pivot to austerity. At the same time, he has doubled down on key right-wing conservative policy prescriptions. Chief among them are ever more strident calls for Ottawa to adopt a more aggressive stance against China and Russia, and strengthen Canada's role in NATO and NORAD, gut environmental and other barriers to resource development projects, and formulate and implement a plan to eliminate the annual federal budget deficit. O'Toole's media-hyped repositioning of the Conservatives is transparently aimed at making the party more electable, by appealing to sections of the middle class hitherto alienated by the pandering to the religious right and hostility to any serious measure to combat climate change. It is also aimed at solidifying big business support. Big capital wants pandemic relief programs for working people rapidly phased out. But fearing the potential for a rapid economic downturn, it is pressed for continued stimulus measures in the form of tax cuts, subsidies, and infrastructure spending. The Conservatives' new climate change policy is also meant to placate the powerful sections of big business who believe they have been too wedded to the interests of big oil, and that Canadian capitalism must seek to become a global leader in the green industries of the future. It is O'Toole's pro-worker agenda that above all demonstrates the true character of his repositioning of the Conservatives. Far from moving to the center, O'Toole and his Conservatives are using demagoguery, lies, smoke and mirror promises, and calibrated appeals to the far right to bamboozle their way into office so they can intensify the assault on the working class at home and pursue imperialist aggression in close concert with Washington around the world. Hi, Reggie, how you doing? Yeah, we got some trolls. Hey, Dan, how you doing? Good to see you. In the name of defending Canadian workers, O'Toole is calling for protectionist, economic nationalist policies. He specifically ties this to Canada's further integration into Washington's full-court diplomatic, economic, and military strategic offensive against China. When he first outlined this policy last September, O'Toole described it as a Canada First policy, and readily admitted its affinity with the America First program of then U.S. President Donald Trump. The Conservative leader subsequently stopped using the Canada First label, just as he dropped the Trump-inspired Take Back Canada slogan he used in winning the Conservative leadership, for fear it would draw attention to the extent of the support that there was, and no doubt still is, for the fascist-minded failed coup plotter Trump within Conservative ranks. O'Toole's advisors claim the Conservatives' pro-worker policies are modelled after those of British Tory Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Long a close ally of Trump, Johnson has made it his political mission to complete the social counter-revolution initiated under Margaret Thatcher. In keeping with this policy of maximizing profit extracted from the working class, Johnson has systematically sabotaged anti-COVID-19 measures, infamously telling his advisors as the pandemic raged, "No more fucking lockdowns. Let the bodies pile high in their thousands." All sections of Canada's political establishment, beginning with the federal Liberal government and including the NDP, have prioritized profits over saving lives throughout the pandemic, with catastrophic results. These include more than 27,000 official COVID-19 deaths and tens of thousands, if not more, stricken with long COVID. Yet, like Trump and Johnson, it is O'Toole and the federal Conservatives' closet provincial allies, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, Saskatchewan's Scott Moe, Ontario's Doug Ford, and Quebec's François Legault, who have been the most vociferous advocates of eliminating all social distancing measures and letting the virus rip. Last October, as Canada's second COVID-19 wave was rapidly developing, O'Toole went to Alberta to specifically praise Kenney's opposition to lockdown measures. He favorably contrasted Kenney's actions with those of Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who was then being chastised by the Toronto Sun and National Post for not fully implementing the homicidal herd immunity policy advocated in the so-called Great Barrington Declaration. O'Toole and his Conservatives have cynically appealed to popular anger over Trudeau's reckless decision to call a snap election amid the country's Delta variant-driven fourth wave, while simultaneously appealing to far-right anti-vax sentiment. This has included opposing mandatory vaccination even for hospital and nursing home workers, and demonstratively refusing to order all Conservative candidates to get vaccinated, or even revealing how many are refusing to do so. Grudgingly, O'Toole announced earlier this week that he would ensure the health minister in a Conservative government, that is the minister responsible for overseeing the procurement and rollout of vaccines, would be vaccinated. In promoting the lie that the Conservatives have changed, the media was quick to point to their platform commitment to increase healthcare transfers to the province by an additional $60 billion over the next 10 years. They also praised O'Toole for making improved mental health care one of their 5 priorities of Canada's recovery plan, and for promising to introduce direct payments to parents via the tax system, in lieu of a Liberal commitment to develop a nationwide network of $10 per day early childcare facilities. However, even before the election campaign is over, these spending promises have proven to be largely smoke and mirrors. When the Conservatives released their costed platform on Wednesday, it emerged that over the next 5 years they plan to increase all federal healthcare spending, including transfers and funding for mental health care, by just $5.1 billion, or $1 billion per annum. Under these conditions, where the pandemic has demonstrated that decades of cuts have ravaged Canada's healthcare system and exacerbated the punishing workloads and psychological stress endured by healthcare workers. Similarly, in place of the Liberal plan, much lauded by sections of corporate Canada's eager to see more women in the labour force, to spend upwards of $26 billion over the next 5 years on creating $10 a day childcare, the Conservatives are proposing to spend just over $2 billion in tax credits. The costed platform reveals the Conservatives' budget priorities are corporate tax cuts, including a 3-year $13.8 billion capital investment tax cut, a rapid end to pandemic relief, which they have castigated as a disincentive to work, and the provision of targeted wage subsidies for industries like tourism that were especially hard hit by the pandemic. The Conservatives have also pledged to double the Canada Work Benefit, which provides a tax credit to the lowest paid workers to a maximum of $2,400 per year, for an individual working full-time and making less than $24,573 per year. While workers condemned to live in poverty no doubt would welcome any increase to their income, the CWB constitutes a subsidy for low-wage employers and is based on the invidious Victorian distinction between the so-called deserving and undeserving poor. Moreover, it is meant to legitimize the Conservatives' tax-cutting agenda, which has and will continue to massively favor the most privileged sections of society and big business. To the initial consternation of sections of his own party, O'Toole's phony pro-worker agenda includes a series of pro-union commitments, such as requiring large federally regulated companies to have worker representation on their board of directors and giving unions greater say in Canadian trade disputes. This reflects an understanding on the part of O'Toole and his backers within the ruling elite that the unions firmly uphold the interests of Canadian capitalism by suppressing the class struggle. These policies are aimed at further integrating the corporatist trade unions with big business and the state, and enjoy in their essential orientation widespread support within the ruling class. While corporate Canada has become increasingly critical of the Trudeau government for its supposed, to quote the Globe and Mail's Wednesday editorial, drunken spending, it has repeatedly praised the government for fostering tripartite collaboration with the unions. The unions have been pivotal in both enforcing the ruling class's ruinous back-to-work, back-to-school policy and suppressing upsurges of militant working-class struggles that have erupted across Canada over recent months. To date, the major unions have eschewed O'Toole's overtures. However, this could easily change if the Conservatives form a government. The U.S. unions, including major international unions with large Canadian memberships, such as the United Steelworkers and the United Ford and Commercial Workers, collaborated closely with Trump and continue to echo his reactionary economic nationalist America First rhetoric. As part of their opposition to public and social services for working people across Canada, the Conservatives have long championed provincial autonomy and, although historically the party of Anglo-chauvinism, have often found common cause with the Quebec nationalists. This continues under O'Toole. On Thursday, Quebec's CAQ, Quebec First Premier François Legault, explicitly endorsed the election of a Conservative government. Among his stated reasons was that the Conservatives have guaranteed not to support a constitutional court challenge to Bill 21, a chauvinist Quebec law that discriminates against religious minorities, especially Muslim women. The media's sympathetic coverage of the Conservative campaign underscores that powerful sections of the ruling class are considering a change of government to shift politics sharply further to the right. A major factor in this is their fear of growing social opposition in the working class and anger that Trudeau has not moved more aggressively against it, including by more forthrightly championing an end to all COVID-19 restrictions. That the ruling class will prevail in the next government, whatever party leads it, to work to place the full burden of the pandemic's economic fallout on the working class was illustrated by a recent article by senior Globe and Mail business columnist Andrew Willis. It reported that Canada's CEOs are angered by the supposed anti-business tenor of the election campaign and the failure of their political representatives to champion a growth agenda, i.e., a battery of measures to swell profits through intensified worker exploitation. To answer your question, Reggie, this was an article entitled, "Canada's Conservatives Rebrand Themselves, the Better to Pursue Austerity and Imperialist Aggression," written by Keith Jones in the World Socialist website. I thought it was important to read that out loud just because there's this odd proclivity, and I find myself even falling for this occasionally, to believe that maybe the Conservatives are different. Maybe they've finally woken up. Maybe they finally changed and they've shifted their tune. Maybe now is the time, right? Maybe now they've finally seen the world as it is, and they've seen the capitalist system, and they understand that maybe it does need to be reformed. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all complete and total bullshit. And the World Socialist website does a very good job, in my view, of creating that argument that we cannot trust conservatives. We simply can't trust them. And you're seeing this manifest itself in the new polling data that actually has the conservatives dropping off considerably, in fact. That not that long ago, they were polling high enough to get 145 seats. And now they're back down 126, which is just a hair's breadth away from where they started at 119 seats. Which, if you're a conservative, and you're like a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, you really want a win here. Like, you're not happy with a few extra seats, right? You can get away with that kind of reasoning if you're an NDP supporter, right? Especially with Jagmeet Singh at the helm. But if you're a conservative, you're here to take power. I think that Aaron O'Toole might have got away with staying in power if he had have seized a minority government. I think his supporters would have been fine with a minority government situation. But if he comes out with this, with the Liberals staying in a minority position, and if Aaron O'Toole walks away with a couple of extra seats, but still in a opposition position, I think they'll get rid of him. They got rid of Andrew Scheer when Andrew Scheer actually had a very successful campaign. If you remember correctly, Andrew Scheer actually gained the Conservatives' seats while simultaneously bringing the Liberals from a majority to a minority position. That, historically speaking, this is the path of victory in Canadian politics. That Andrew Scheer, by any metric, was victorious in that election. Sure, did he seize a majority government and seize power and all that kind of stuff? No. But he brought the Liberals to a minority government while gaining more power for himself, and they got rid of him for that. So I think Aaron O'Toole's in significant trouble here. I think that he had a moment, that there was a swell, and everyone became interested in conservatives again, and then we all took a look at him, and we realized, oh, he's just another fucking Harper clone. He's just another one of these. And so it all settled back down. And the people who are not happy with, and even more dangerously for the Conservatives and for the nation, is that while support for O'Toole dropped back down from Liberals, well, you've got the People's Party now polling at 6.1 or 6 which is almost as good as the Bloc Québécois gets. And so the Conservatives are definitely losing supporters to the far right element. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing, bud? WSW's one of the sites suppressed by Global, more noticeably, yeah. Yep, any third-party organization, right? To be fair to organizations like Google and YouTube and all of this, is that it seems to be across the board. If you're a third party, like a non-corporate source, you are deprioritized in the algorithm. That's completely the truth. And if you're like Fox News or MSNBC, IA, I heard that today. I think it was Max Blumenthal said it. MSNBC, IA. Then you do fine. And Demand Better, I want you to know, I've been watching some of your stuff. You're good, man. You're good. You got a good voice. You're just getting started out. It's a marathon, not a sprint, okay, bud? It's a marathon, not a sprint, but you're good. You're good, and your heart's in the right spot, and you're analyzing stuff that I don't see other people analyze, which is good. It's good to find your niche. It's good to find it, and you'll find your voice, and you'll get stronger at it and better at it. But I can tell that the impulse is there, right? Your impulse is there, right? You feel it. Like you got to be asking yourself, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? I ask myself that all the time, literally. Like Monday morning is the worst. Because I'm like gonna go do the stream, and I haven't done it in 2 days, and I'm literally like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, what is this? But there's like an impulse, like there's something in you somewhere that's just insisting that this work be done. And I can tell. And I can tell you've got it. So get ready for it, bud. Get ready for it, because the grind is coming. The grind is coming. You'll feel the grind. Like at first, it's like a novelty almost. It's like oh, look at me, I'm finally doing that thing that I feel like I need to do. The grind is coming. Don't let that scare you off, or don't let it stop you. I've seen it stop people. I know people, good people, who have stopped because the grind came. It's about the grind. It's about the grind. You gotta lean into the grind. And it's the grind that wears away all of the bullshit. No, it's not about pushing through it. It's not about pushing through it. It's about accepting that the grind is part of it, and that what the grind grinds off of you is the bullshit. The grind will grind off the bullshit and leave what's good behind. Yeah. And if you're all bullshit, it'll grind you right away. It'll just grind you right down. Yeah. Yeah, it will. Yeah, it will. Anyway, that's getting a bit dark. That's getting a bit personal. I don't mean to spook you, bud. I don't mean to spook you, but I do like to haunt. I feel like I'm a ghost. Kind of walking around. I'm beginning to realize more and more, by the way, that the people who are still here at around this time are like the true believer crowd, right? I'm beginning to see that that's the case. And all the numbers are kind of showing that's the case. Like, it's very strong at the beginning, right? I got like a middle section where I play some music and do all that kind of stuff, and that's nice. And then people drop out at around 8 o'clock. You know, people go off to do their own thing or any of that kind of stuff. But it's the people who are still here at 8 and onward that I think are the true believers. My next one is going to be about the NDP tax plan and how it's more credible than the libcons. That's exactly what I'm talking about, dude. Like, I would never do that. I would never do like the NDP tax plan, how it's more credible than the libcons. Like, that's not my jam, but it's your jam for sure. And there's for sure people out in the world who are going to be interested in that kind of stuff. And if you don't do it, then who's doing it, right? Like, that's the big thing to remember about that. Like, if you're not doing it, who's doing it? And so nobody knows anything about that, right? And if you can elucidate it and make it consumable, right? Then that's a big win. And it's just about doing it. Just about doing it over and over again and getting better at it and getting better at it and getting better at it and getting better at it. Oh. And then one day, demand better, you might be like me, a person who may be able to pay his rent. Well, as we're getting into the twilight hour of this, let's just take a look at some of the memes that have popped up. This is from Masses United, right? Who is actually a subscriber. So I hope you're doing well, Masses United. Late stage capitalism. Tell people their only value is labor. 2. Alienate people from their potential and neighbors. 3. Discredit and underfund public institutions. 4. Atomized and misinformed people call for privatization and attack institutions. 5. Profit and repeat. This is exactly it, right? Like, it's the cycle of privatization, right? It's right in front of us. It's constant. Like, they're just constantly chipping away at our public institutions. They're just constantly chipping away at the public institutions until finally people who don't know any better, who don't realize that it's been a steady chipping away, will buy into these nonsense like, oh, you gotta, the private sector never works, and so let's just privatize it because the private business will get it done. Yeah, right. not increase funding for this shit, right? Oh, can't help but notice that you've chipped away at the funding for this for 20 years. Like, what do you think's happening? What do you think's happening? Here is some news in regards to the fellow that threw stones and gravel at Justin Trudeau. The London, Ontario police have charged 25-year-old Shane Marshall with 1 count of assault with a weapon in connection to the gravel stone thrown at Justin Trudeau on Monday. And I have to say, as a person who is not voting Justin Trudeau, I don't think that much of Justin Trudeau, honestly, or the Liberals. I think that they are completely bought out by the capitalist death cult. Still completely unacceptable to throw stones at him. Completely unacceptable. Like, that is not how we move forward as a people. That if we think that violence must be done to people like Justin Trudeau, it should be after a long, lengthy court battle in which sides are drawn and we have it discussed and we come to a decision, right? That's how you execute former leaders. You don't just throw shit at them. And one day I hope to live in a country, where we actually do prosecute our leaders and have them executed, like they did in Europe after World War II. I hope that we can get there. It's such a shame what we're seeing in the United States with the rehabilitation of George W. Bush, right? That we're all supposed to completely just ignore the fact that this guy is as bad a war criminal as Adolf Hitler, right? We're just supposed to ignore that he started a 20-year war that has cost $2 trillion and has murdered well more people than 9/11 did. And incidentally, 9/11 had nothing to do with Afghanistan or Iraq for that matter, right? And I say the same thing about the Obama administration, that like Obama should be tried and executed as a war criminal, pretty clearly. He's as bad as Adolf Hitler ever was, right? The idea that we shouldn't, and there's this idea in our society that you can't talk this way, right? Oh, this isn't to be said in civil society or polite society. I'm like, fuck that. Fuck that. Justin Trudeau sells weapons to known war criminals. He sells weapons to people so that they can commit a genocide, right? Yeah, we should arrest him and put him on trial for selling arms to a genocide. But all of this is going to require like a reckoning within the populace, right? That we're all going to have to wake up and recognize. And even Eggs pissed off, like even Eggs. Because the thing is that doing that kind of thing discredits the movement, right? And if the movement is to actually be taken seriously and is to be taken, to become a legitimized force, right? Like, if we are to actually say to people, yeah, like Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper, these men should be arrested as war criminals because they are war criminals, right? Like, you don't get to sell arms to genocidal countries, right, who are actively committing a genocide. You don't get to do that. Like, sorry, you should be arrested and put on trial for that kind of a thing. And, but if we pretend as though, like, if we take our rage and our anger and put it into throwing eggs and gravel, right? Well, then we're never actually going to articulate and actually move forward on a narrative that says, hey, the actual way to do this is to elect people who are going to arrest war criminals and put them on trial and have them hung as war criminals. That's how you do this. We've done it before. We should continue doing it, right? When it comes to the powerful, when it comes to elected officials, I'm very, very in favor of the death penalty, right? I don't think that the death penalty should be used for civilians. I don't think the death penalty should be used as a civilian punishment. I definitely think that the death penalty should be used as a punishment for our elected officials. 100%. 100%. Because, like, these guys are selling weapons. Like, these guys are arms dealers to genocides. Yeah. Yeah, they should be arrested and put on trial and charged and hung, for sure. So I understand the inclination Like, I understand why we should throw shit at these guys, but that's not going to go anywhere, right? And the state and the powerful know how to fight back against that kind of thing, right? They know what to do about that kind of thing. And in truth, it actually just empowers them, right? It entrenches their power when, part of the issue, of course, that we're having as a society is that we're very gullible, right? We're very, very gullible. This is why we need to pressure the NDP to work with further left parties and start getting more Demsocs and communists in there. War crimes will not be prosecuted by libcons. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my hope, and this election has really kind of convinced me that I should get more involved with the NDP myself. Because I do agree with you. I think that, like, Jagmeet Singh is in the power he has in the NDP because he took the party over with his Sikh base, right? That the Sikhs all got together and did it. Shane Marshall. And that can happen again, right? Like, if the communists all got together and took the party over. Former People's Party of Canada riding president charged after gravel thrown. Yeah, so it's not a candidate, it's a riding president. Like, yeah. You're seeing that there are consequences for your actions, guys. Like, you can't just throw shit at people. Especially not the Prime Minister, right? Especially not the Prime Minister. Yeah, this actually had big repercussions within the PPC. Like, people got fired over it, people got let go. Like, it's we're not the fucking, like, no. Like, have some fucking decorum. Like, he's still the Prime Minister of our country. He's still the leader. He's the elected leader, right? Whether you like him or not. But we shouldn't accept, like, this devolving into throwing shit. Oh, here's a great quote. Comes from Noam Chomsky. Suppose that on 9/11 the planes had bombed the White House. Suppose they'd killed the president, established a military dictatorship, quickly killed thousands, tortured tens of thousands more, set up a major international terror center that was carrying out assassinations, overthrowing governments all over the place, installing other dictatorships, and drove the country into one of the worst depressions in its history, and had to call on the state to bail them out. Suppose that had happened. Well, it did happen. On the first 9/11 in 1973. Except we were responsible for it, so it didn't happen. That's Allendé's Chile. You can't imagine the media talking about this. And it's stuff like this that I go back and I say about the PPC. Even PPC voters understand that you shouldn't trust the media, right? Even PPC voters understand that you shouldn't trust the media. And that's what is at the beating heart of the conflicts we are facing today as a people. Because not only do we have disagreements, but we don't have a system to air those disagreements with one another that's honest at all, right? That the apparatus we have in order to have the discussion amongst one another is itself completely corrupted. What do we do about that? And the only thing that we can do about that is take to the streets. Because the conversations we're going to have in the streets are going to be honest, right? That the conversations that we're going to have amongst one another in the streets are the conversations that are going to be real, that are going to be undeniable, that if there is 1,000 people standing on the streets saying, hey, we care about climate change, you cannot bullshit those people anymore, right? That the climate change narrative here in Canada changed completely with the climate change rallies. There were hundreds of thousands of people in the streets here in Toronto. At least. And that was a moment when the media, when the ruling class literally stopped bullshitting us about whether or not climate change was real. It stopped. It ended completely. The Liberals declared climate change emergency. The media stopped entertaining the idea that climate change was somehow not It was somehow a hoax or something. It stopped completely. They grifted us in other ways. Like the grift that's going on now is to just pander, right? Just placate, right? But what they can't grift us on anymore is that, oh, there's confusion on the issue. And why? Because 100,000 people were in the streets about it. That's it. Story's over, right? We see through the bullshit. And that's how this is going to go moving forward. That it's going to be groups of people getting into the streets, right? Conversations happening in the streets. And people are just going to be like, oh yeah, that's what the media is saying is total bullshit. Why do I know that? Because there's 1,000 people in the streets, right? Like if the media tried to convince me right now that everyone is perfectly calm about this COVID thing. Oh yes, the COVID thing is happening and we're all putting you into isolation and everyone's being completely cooperative and completely calm about it. I would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I've seen the anti-mask protests, right? I've seen what's going on, right? Don't bullshit me. Don't bullshit me on that. People are mad. People are upset, right? So it's going to happen in the streets. That's where the real movement is going to happen. The personal responsibility crowd never seems to understand consequences when it comes to themselves. Of course. Of course. And honestly, the personal responsibility crowd are the least responsible, right? Because they don't want to take responsibility for extremely basic things, right? They don't want to take responsibility for the health of the nation they live in. They don't want to take personal responsibility for the safety of their community. They don't want to take personal responsibility for the health and safety of their neighbor, right? They're not interested in that. No, they're not interested in responsibility, right? They're interested in being selfish. It's different. If an actual responsible person would actually care about their neighbor, right? They would understand that they have a responsibility to their neighbor, that there is a civic responsibility. There is such a thing as a responsibility to the society, right? And every adult that I've ever met understands that, right? And if you don't understand that, then you're not a fucking adult, right? That it's not just about like taking responsibility for yourself, because what they're espousing is not responsibility. It's just selfishness, right? Like having a big fucking truck that pollutes and destroys the environment around it isn't personal responsibility, it's selfishness. And so we got to start checking these guys on this language. They're not the personal responsibility crowd, they're the selfish crowd. They just want everything for themselves, and the moment you ask them to do something perfectly reasonable, they just start squalling like children because that's all they are. Here is a COVID map, right? Most of the COVID cases, the yellower the map, that's where the COVID is, here in the city of Toronto. So in the core, in fact, if you're living in the core, you're actually the safest. The subway lines, for the most part, are actually very safe in terms of COVID. Seeing this actually really helped me out. It really alleviated a lot of tension for me. That where the most is happening is up in the Vaughan region. Right? In the more rural areas, big surprise, right? And getting a little bit looser out in Scarborough, kind of the beaches area where I'm at, right down here in the beaches. And but for the most part, like this is looking pretty safe. I would like to know more. I don't really understand this. Truthfully, I think I was very dismissive right there because like rural, small town. But like something more genuine and serious has to be happening in this area, and I'm just not really aware of what that is. But I thought I would let you guys know. Yeah, the media will never cover Syria accurately because then people would wonder why Uncle Sam spent 20 years fighting Al Qaeda while supporting Al Qaeda in Syria. Exactly. Oh, here's a great one. I'm going to close with this one. This guy nails it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if I should go for the... Hey, how's it going? Do you need help with anything?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if I should go for the army, school, or slavery.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of customers with the same debate, but not a lot of people choose slavery nowadays. It used to be a popular choice back then, but I think it's gonna come back.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's becoming that new thing again. You know how kids, they bring stuff back and make it retro, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right. So, what's the difference between the army and slavery?
Well, with the Army, they offer education, family services, and a strong sense of discipline, but there's a big chance you're going to go to war and die.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but with slavery, they need to keep you alive so you can keep on working, so that means you're probably not going to die, you know?
Yeah, you're right. So how about school and slavery?
Yeah, school hasn't really been lucrative lately, especially since the cost has been rising and it's been hard to find a job after you graduate. You'll pretty much end up with a lot of debt once you're done.
That's true.
Yeah, but with slavery, you're not making any money, and with no money means no debt. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? You're right. That makes total sense.
Yeah. So have you made your choice?
Yep, slavery it is.
All right, I'll get two of my boys to come take you in to get started.
All right. Thank you for your help.
No problem.
Yep. That's it, right? That's the conversation. All right, guys. This is the end of me. If you're still listening, bless your heart for being here. Never forget. Never forget. You are a divine being, standing in divine energy. These guys are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to convince you that something else is going on. Don't let them. Good luck. We're going to need it.